Session meeting. Please stand as we observe a moment of silence followed by the Pledge of Allegiance led by Ms. Satterfield.
The pledge. I pledge allegiance
to the flag
So do we have any elected officials here tonight? Just a reminder that Knox County Schools will be closed for winter break, December 20th through the 31st. We hope for a well-deserved restful break for all their students, families, and staff. Teachers will report back for the spring semester on Monday, January 3rd, and students will return to class on Tuesday, January 4th. And also, Monday, January 3rd, we'll start our new schedule where we meet on Monday, Wednesday of the same week for board members. Board members, you received an email yesterday, but I wanted to note publicly that legal reference updates and clarifications were made to policies J353, J357, and J390, and a cross-reference was added to policy J350 as requested by Ms. Owen at last week's work session. For item 10C regarding our superintendent search, a draft brochure and the interim report from TSBA is attached, and I would like to move that item to be considered prior to our consent agenda items. Are there any other requested changes to the agenda? Mr. Jen?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. Would it be possible to add a board form at the end of this meeting?
Yes. Okay, and Ms. Henderson and Ms. Babb are stuck in construction traffic, so they will be here shortly. So do we have a motion to approve the agenda? So a motion by Mr. Watson, a second by Ms. Satterfield. All in favor, aye? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. So Superintendent Thomas, do we want to wait for the Hardin Valley recognition for Ms. Henderson?
might be better if you could for Ms. Henderson to be here.
She should be here shortly. So did you have a report, anything else? Okay. Okay. So, Ms. Satterfield, I guess we will move into the superintendent search? Yeah.
Awesome. Well, great. I thought we was going to be at the end, but lucky for you, Tammy. Is that okay for you? All right, awesome. So we have the last few weeks, we have been collecting data with the survey results for the superintendent criteria and what the community wants to see in the superintendent. We also had a series of community forums. We also had a student forum that Raymond gave us updates about at our last meeting. And so all of the data is compiled, and Tammy's going to, Dr. Tammy Grissom from Tennessee School Board Association is going to give us the update. And board, ideally, we will be able to ask her questions, but the goal from today is that we will adopt a criteria, and we also will have full understanding of the process moving forward. And so I would like for us to make sure that we get all our questions out or anything that we don't know. And we do have public forum on this. Do you want to do it now or you want to do it later?
Right. And, well, actually, now that Ms.
I'm sorry, Dr.
Sorry.
Okay.
Well, since Ms. Henderson's here, we do have some student recognition, so maybe we could do that first, and then we'll get right back to you.
Okay. Pause that.
Hey, thank you, Madam Chair. It's always a pleasure and an honor to recognize our schools, our principals, our students, and teachers for their accomplishments. So I'd like to take a few minutes this evening to recognize one of our high schools for receiving national recognition and its ongoing commitment to inclusion. Hardin Valley Academy is just one of over a dozen schools in the state designated as a Special Olympics Unified Champion School, which promotes meaningful social inclusion and a sense of collaboration, engagement, and respect for all members of the student body and staff. Earlier this year, the school received national banner recognition from the Special Olympics for its efforts. This means the school has met 10 national standards of excellence. HVA is the first and only school in the state to be named a National Unified Champion School. To celebrate this honor, the school held a pep rally featuring an exhibition game by the Unified Basketball Team, speakers from Hardin Valley Academy, and Special Olympics Tennessee. We're so proud of Hardin Valley Academy, its students and staff for earning this very deserving recognition. Please join me in congratulating Hardin Valley Academy and Dr. Spees, and if your group would come forward, we'd like to present you with a certificate and get a picture.
All right, we ready? Here we go. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. Don't worry. Nice job. Nice job. I worked hard. Good job. Sweet.
All right, thank you. So just to update, Board Member Henderson and Bab, we moved up the superintendent conversation so that we can, at the front of our agenda, so that's what we're about to go into now. So yeah, going back to it. So our community, but before we get with you, Dr. Grissom, if we can start with, start with our public forum. We have a public forum speaker. I know, it's okay, you know, we're here, we're gonna get to it. Lance McCoy, if you can come up. You have 3 minutes to speak.
Good evening, Lance McCold, Knox County. Thank you for letting me speak. First I want to say that I am going to talk about the NAACP recommendations for the superintendent, but I'm not speaking for the NAACP. I'm doing what anybody could do, look at what the NAACP has said and compare it with what we have. I guess the first thing I want to do is say that I can't find any evidence in this proposed criteria or the document that the NAACP recommended criteria are reflected in this or considered. There's been very little time. This thing only dropped late yesterday afternoon, so I might have missed it, but I don't see it either, the recommendations or the discussion in the report. And if it's there, and I act like it's not, my apologies. You know, one of the things that the NAACP recommended is that we should look for people who have demonstrated the ability to implement Knox County's vision, which includes increasing student achievement, eliminating disparities, and creating a positive culture. And that is not listed in the recommended criteria. I do think that if, you know, our strategic plan and its priorities ought to be front and center. I think that the criteria look to me to be inconsistent and weak. In some places, the proposed criteria use strong expressions such as a record of or has demonstrated for some criteria, but for other criteria, it uses weak things like has experience, has the ability. Many people have ability and experience, but our students and our community deserve a superintendent with a record of successes, not just ability and experiences. So these criteria need to be improved. Some of the criteria in the TSBA recommendations appear to be TSBA opinions more than stakeholder comments. One of the ones that jumped out at me, and of course I had way too little time to really look at things exhaustively, is one of the recommendations is that the candidate should have a record of working effectively with the school board and keeping the board well-informed, sharing credit for accomplishments, and enhancing the reputation and effectiveness of the board. Well, I don't see anything, and I haven't heard anything where anybody was saying that they wanted the board, the superintendent, to be there to enhance the reputation of the board. And frankly, I don't think that that's the superintendent's job. Their job is to run the schools.
Thank you, Mr. McCoy. That was 3 minutes. Thank you. So as board, as we continue to look over the criteria and what we're going to adopt, the ultimate goal of this session today is for us to move forward with the criteria so we can get it out there and start recruiting candidates. And so whatever recommendation that you have or any changes, let's make them today.
Just a point of order, Madam Chair. I don't think we had a motion and a second on the item. I think we need to do that from a clarification.
Okay.
We have a motion? Because it was discussion and
Discussion and possible action, right?
So we would do, somebody could make the possible action, I guess, after. I mean.
Oh, I thought we had to make a motion to have the discussion, but maybe not. I don't care. I'm just saying.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I mean, you all can have the discussion. I mean, you all decided to move it up to the front of the pecking order anyway. So, but Madam Chair is correct that if anybody wants to do any type of action, then that would require a motion. Second.
All right, thank you. Now, Dr. Tammy Grissom, if you can please give us the report from what was shared from our community at large. Thank you so much.
Thank you, and thank you, members of the board and the superintendent. I have placed it, or Terry did rather, at your seats, and she also made copies as well, and you got it emailed to you last night, is this report. If we could just start, I mean, I'm not going to obviously read all the comments, but our job was to take the comments from the online surveys, which were, we received 1,446 online surveys, and it had lots of comments. And then we conducted the meetings last week, and so from all the information we gathered at the meetings is included in this report. And also your student representative, as you have noted, did a great job. Thank you very much for conducting the student forums. Their report, as they wrote the report, we just put it as is at the end of our report, so you can see exactly. So thank you very much for doing that. The meetings were also, at each of the meetings, they were asked to complete a criteria preference ranking on 20-plus items. We're going to review that in the back. That's where we get a lot of our proposed criteria. But we take the criteria, the comments that were made. So any comments that were given to us, they're reflected in here. If I were not given something, it's not in here. So we took our notes from the meetings, we took our comments from the online surveys, and then some participants at the meetings handed us comments, and then a lot of participants would write their comments on the back of the forms. They didn't want to speak during the meeting, but they made comments on the back of their forms. So all of those are reflected in this report. We conducted, if you'll go to page 1, we list there we had 6 meetings that we conducted, and we conducted those in the same manner and we asked 3 questions. They're on page 2. What are the good things going on that you'd like to see continue if a new superintendent coming in? What programs or services that you'd like to see continued? Then we asked what problems or challenges a new superintendent will face coming into the new position, and what personal characteristics that you'd like to see. And if you'll look on page 2, the most common responses to the question about what are the good things going on, and there were lots of comments, as you can see from this report, but some of the most common were Project Grad, restorative interventions, your Office of School Culture, CTE, caring teachers and staff, and relationships with community organizations. The most common responses to the question about challenges was the effects of COVID, teacher and staff shortages, disparities in education, inequalities among schools, recruitment of diverse staff, and a divided Board of Education. When asked about the personal characteristics, the most common responses were good listener, experience in the classroom, a strong leader, and someone that is focused on students. Now let's jump to starting on page 5. That's an overview, and I know you all have had a chance to look at that yesterday. That's an overview of all comments from each of the meetings that we conducted in person, and then we also include all the comments that were made on the 1,400 online surveys. And then if you go to, starting on page 20 is the exact report from the student forums, and that's on pages 20 and I think through 27. And then if you'll look on page 29, these were the 21 things that we asked participants to rank these different criteria. And you will see on this form, we highlighted the top 10. So that's where we got a lot of our criteria was from the ranking of this chart, of these items, and from the comments. So that is that page. And if we can flip back to page 28, based on the comments, and then I have spoken with some of you individually. On page 28, this is the proposed criteria that we are presenting to the board for your discussion. You can adopt as is, you can change it all, whatever, but this is a starting point. So with that, Madam Chairman, open for any discussion or questions.
Thank you. Mr. Watson? Or Ms. Babb? Sorry.
Ms. Grissom, or Dr. Grissom, I have a question for you a little bit, and this is more just a procedure. About the format, like, I mean, the way this is a brochure. So I guess my question is, and this is where I don't know enough about how we seek out these people. Since it's being done as this kind of brochure type thing, is it mailed out? Because in my mind, and the way we're all digital and everything like that, probably a digital flyer or something would be something people would see more. Because when I did like read this online and everything, since it's formatted as a brochure, it's very hard to read if you just look at the digital version. So I kind of did want to ask about that, why we're doing this kind of formatting, which I know has nothing to do with the substance of it.
It's a great question. We can do whatever method. We do email it out, but we do mail it sometimes to some folks. Like, we also gave people the opportunity, if they would like, for us to send any candidates that they think would be good candidates. We'll send a recommendation, and we typically will put a brochure, but it is no problem for us to revise the format and make it just a front and back, more like a flyer for the email. So whatever you all want to do, we can do it.
I think for anybody getting it digitally, I think when it's formatted as a brochure, it's very hard to read. So that would just be my only recommendation. That has nothing to do with substance.
No, it's very good point.
My question, and then this maybe is another question. This is on the procedures and superintendent search process, which is on page 4.
Yes, I was going to get to that.
Okay, I'll wait. You want us to wait on that then?
Yeah, I'd kind of like to do the criteria, and then let's go to the procedures, but you can do it whatever method you...
No, that's still,
Okay.
I didn't know if we were getting to that later, so I have a question about that when we get to it.
Okay.
Then probably the only thing kind of substance that I kind of wanted to address was, and it's under the district part, and I just felt like it was sort of not real cohesive. It's like probably the 4th paragraph down when we just talk about, and the district has partnered with community organizations. I just felt like that did not flow very well, and I mean, I don't mind trying to write something better or whatever, but just even kind of like starting a paragraph with and I didn't know if we maybe, and I'd kind of tried to reach out to some of our staff people, maybe kind of even giving a little bit more detail, which obviously we're limited in space and not doing it, but just being like, you know, that we're partnering with mental health professionals, you know, maybe putting a little bit more substance into that That was maybe.
Space should not be a problem.
Okay.
I honestly, this is a starting point.
Sure.
You all can have 20 criteria. I don't care.
Right.
So any changes you want to make, Madam Chairman, I don't know what the most efficient way to do that would be, but if some of you have several, I know Daniel has several changes, it might be better instead of us doing this at a board meeting, that perhaps maybe your changes to the brochure could be given to Terry, and she can get with our staff, and we can make those changes. Would that, well, once we discuss and we all agree to the changes, would that be a better process?
It is hard to edit as a.
So you
Yeah.
mean agreeing on the changes tonight and then?
I
or
think
are
we
you
need to
saying
agree on the
bring-
criteria, but, you know,
Right.
the layout, I can do at the office, or if there's some editorial type things. I don't know if there's a lot of you that have changes, and if you did you bring them printed? I know Daniel, we have his, and everyone has a copy of, I don't mean to call you out, but I do have a copy of yours, yeah.
I guess my, Madam Chair, if you don't-
Yeah, go ahead.
I guess my question would be, whatever changes that we need to we gotta vote on this today. But we don't have to, but if we don't vote on it, then it delays. And so whatever changes, if we can lift them up on what that paragraph will look like, and if the board can agree to that, then we can submit it to Terry. But today's the vote.
Mr. Watson?
Is it possible, just for clarification, is it possible to vote on the substance of the criteria and not the exact wording? I mean, we're basically developing a marketing piece, and we don't typically vote on marketing pieces. So, I mean, can we vote on the substance and not the exact wording?
Mr. Dupler?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, the board can do a combination. The board can do, either or. So if you wanted to vote on some specific language that perhaps is from Mr. Watson's edits, you can do that. But on the other hand, if as Ms. Babb says, she would rather have a different format, you can say, okay, we're going to put it in a different format. I mean, so you can vote on concepts or specific language, and then but whatever you vote on, if you're voting on a concept, just you all need to understand that there could be some tweaks in the
Sure.
language, and then it'll be done.
And thank you for saying that, because I think that's the point of these 10. Like, number one is if you want the criterion to be effective listener, that's what number one's about. If you don't want that to be one, we need to mark that one out. But if you're okay with that being one of the criteria for this position, we can leave it in. If we need to tweak the sentence and verbs, that kind of thing, we can do. But I think, number two is a change agent. That's what number two is about. Now, if we need to reword the sentence, obviously we can. But I think if we can agree on what the main items are, is what we need. I think we could do that tonight.
So, Mr.
Yeah, can I make some general comments about just what I tried to intend to do as a whole? And then also I want to speak to the report, Dr. Grissom. Really appreciate all your work. I know you had very little, and your team had very little time to turn this around, and I know you processed a lot of criteria, and I know anytime I've tried to generate themes from surveys and public comments, I mean, it is a task to do. So I really appreciate all that. One thing just with the report, I think we're going to possibly want to end up publishing this online. Before we do that, I think it would be fairly simple. I wonder if, like, on the online survey and the other areas that have numbers next to them, when somebody says, hey, this comment was made 20 times or whatever, if we could put those in order in terms of the frequency at which it was said, I think that'll make it a little bit easier for people to process through. I think that would be good. And then when I looked at the brochure and the criteria, based upon the feedback, and I did look at the letter from the NAACP too, in my estimation, most everything that the NAACP plus the other criteria or the other comments that we had, I think is fairly reflective in those 10. And I also don't know that we want to have much more than 10. So my intent in the edits was actually nothing substantive. It was really about making it a little bit easier to read. The criteria themselves were written as incomplete sentences. And so I think if we're sending this out to potential superintendents, like they have all had periods with them, right? We just need to remove the periods.
A lot of the online, you have to be careful. I didn't want to reword. We put it in as it was typed in online, so you know.
No, I don't mean in
yeah.
the report, I mean in the brochure.
Oh, yeah,
So,
brochure.
yeah, so in the
Yeah.
brochure, yeah, I'm sure there's lots of comments in the report that
Yeah.
are not complete sentences. I'm talking about in the brochure and the edits that I tried to make. So the only thing that I thought we needed to remove was under the position, and it's actually word for word our policy, and these words are actually reflective in other school board policies across the state. I looked, but it's actually not very meaningful, and I don't know that we need it. And I talked to Dr. Grissom before the meeting. That certificate of qualifications issued by the State Board of Education doesn't even exist. So, like, to include that might mean that people disqualify themselves because they don't have something that doesn't exist. I would just remove that section, and then everything else that I tried to do was just to make it a little bit easier to read. And then in the district portion, under the system facts, those were all duplicated in the paragraphs above. I didn't think we needed to repeat them twice. So I used that section instead to list student demographics, which if I'm a potential superintendent, I would want those demographics listed. I just lifted that from our strategic plan, which was probably not been edited in a while, so those particular demographics probably need to be updated. So do you all have the red line version? Do you all have it? Yeah, so I just got rid of this system facts section and put student demographics because I thought everything else in the system facts was listed above. And I felt like it was important to list KCS as the third largest employer. I think that's an important thing for folks to know. And the other minor fact that I added was that we are governed by, that the superintendent and the system is governed by a board of 9 board members. So I added that, but everything else was just trying to make it easier to read. But I thought that the criteria was pretty reflective of the comments that we got from, again, the NAACP and all the other sources. So thank you for the work on it.
Thank you, Daniel. And I did want to mention about the superintendent. I know all of you know this, but just to be clear, in order to be a superintendent in Tennessee, all that is required by law is a bachelor's degree. There's no longer any superintendent endorsement or certificate, so.
Ms. Owen?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Since we just got this information yesterday and are trying to turn it around in one day, I think it's a poor practice for us to do this. Looking at the calendar, we have 2 business weeks before our next meeting and 2 holiday weeks. I would strongly suggest that we put this off and have a special called meeting before our January 3rd meeting so that we can have some time to actually consider this criteria and some time to actually discuss it.
Ms. Babb, did you have something else, or? Okay.
I can wait, I mean, mine's.
Okay. I don't know, Ms. Warren?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Tammy, thank you for all the work that you've put into getting all of this organized to this point. So I agree with Daniel about the NAACP letter. I feel like that the points made are included in here in some form or fashion. I think that just the brochure itself, I like only, having 10 criteria. I feel like if you get more than that, it gets too wordy and just too much. So I think we need to make sure that we talk about and agree on which 10 criteria it should be, but I think we should limit it to 10. And the system facts, I see your point about listing the demographics, but I really think that this is sufficient the way it's listed here. I feel like if somebody's really interested in our district, that they're probably going to get on our website and poke around and see what else they can learn about our district. I feel like that it's, I think you can learn a lot just by glancing quickly at those system facts. So I guess I would like to hear what other board members think about that, because I'm certainly not opposed to doing it the way you've suggested, but this is just so clear. I would just like to hear some other feedback from other board members on that. And then the other thing that I've noted is that I think that, one thing I think we do need to make sure we add that we would definitely want a master's degree, or let's talk about that criteria, because that's not listed anywhere. So we probably need to discuss that. And then, you know, in looking at the 10 criteria, and I'm not even sure, Tammy, if that would be part of the 10 or if it would be listed separate.
It's typically listed under the position.
Okay.
And I think that's what Daniel was referring to, under position in the brochure, that second paragraph. We lifted that from your policy. And so your policy, if you want to make a minimum, that's where it would, I
Okay.
would suggest it go, is the minimum qualifications under the position section.
Okay, all right. Okay, thank you. And, you know, I would say maybe we need to just maybe walk through each criteria and make sure that everybody likes these criteria and make sure, because, you know, and then I'm fine with if we decide on which criteria we want and then the wording is finessed after the fact. I feel confident that that can be done and, you know, without us having to sit here and talk through every single word. So I think it would be more efficient just to make sure we go through all the criteria. And I think those are the points I had at the moment. Thank you.
Ms. Henderson?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just want to say, Daniel, thank you so much for taking the time to go over this and present these changes. I agree with what you've said and your changes. I actually like the student demographics because it puts more emphasis on our students versus putting emphasis on the system. And so I really appreciate that. I really like that part. And just wanted to thank you for these changes. I really like everything that you put in here.
Ms. Babb?
Yeah, this is something minor, but I thought I'd bring it up because it's not addressed in the edits that Daniel made. But on the application process, I did found this a little bit confusing. Down below it says apply online, and it has our website. And then when it talks about a screening committee will review candidates' qualifications, match those qualifications against the board's stated criteria. The only reason I think because y'all are a board, TSBA, and we're a board, I thought it would be good to clarify Knox County Schools Board. I just thought that could be confusing since we're hiring TSBA. I'm assuming we mean Knox County Schools Board there, but I did think that in that paragraph below, that might be good to clarify.
Okay.
That was the only thing, just because, especially since TSBA is the one that's doing it, I thought that could be a little bit confusing on which board we're talking about. And that was just a very minor. But I also probably agree with Susan. I mean, I think I kind of agree with what everybody's saying. I don't think we need to nitty-gritty on the words, and, you know, I didn't get that down in detail, but I would like almost just to go one, can we agree on one? I guess maybe first, we need to decide Ms. Owen's recommendation of if we put it off or if we're okay to move forward. And if we're okay to move forward, then I would like us to go basically through one. Do we all agree on one? Do we not agree on one? Is there another one we do? Not necessarily getting into the exact wording, but the general concept, to just go through those 10.
Okay. And I'm going to go to Mr. McMillan. Were you done?
I'm done.
Okay, and I'll come back to you, Mr. Watson. Mr. McMillan?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Now, do we want to go to deciding whether we're going to put it off, or are we still talking about this? You
I
said
think we should make that decision, because if that's the decision, then we can move on with the agenda for the day.
Okay. I will make the motion that we move forward with our timeline as we have previously discussed.
So we have a motion by Mr. McMillan to proceed with the timeline we voted on, and a second by Ms. Babb. So is there any discussion, further discussion on that? Ms. Horn?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would agree with Mr. McMillan, and I think Dr. Grissom has driven here from Nashville, and so it would be nice to have her input. I don't think it's fair to ask her to come back again. It would be nice to have her input, and I really think we need to have a discussion about this. I'm not sure how we can move forward unless we talk about it, because we have all the information. I think that the point where we are is we need to discuss it, and that's what our plan is to do tonight. So I think we should go forward, go through it and discuss this, and so that we can move forward.
So I don't know who was next on that. Mr. Watson?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, to the motion that's on the floor, if it were me, I would have slowed everything down, but I would have done it weeks and months ago. And we've kind of talked about this several times in terms of the timeline as a board, and we've agreed to it. So I don't want us to agree and backtrack and agree and backtrack. And so I would be for keeping on our timeline, only because we've discussed the issue and we've made a decision to do it. And I don't think anybody's surprised that we're getting this report tonight, because we just did the meetings last week, and it would have been like a superhero effort to turn it around any quicker to get it to us. I mean, we came to the meeting tonight planning to vote on criteria. Again, I would have slowed it down, but I would have done it, weeks ago when we discussed it, and we didn't. So I think we need to move forward with what we planned, so.
Ms. Owen?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just want to be sure that it's in the record that we did our due diligence the last time we had a superintendent search, and we spent a lengthy workshop going over criteria, determining criteria, figuring out what we as a board wanted in our next superintendent. And I'm not sure that we are meeting much of a definition of due diligence with the way we are doing this time around. Thank you.
Ms. Satterfield?
Yes, I would like to just as the chair of the committee, to also go on the record to say that this is the will of the board, and the board has voted numerous times that we want to stick with the timeline, and this is the timeline that's been presented. I will make sure that that I reiterate that from the beginning, that I've been communicating to board members to come with what you want to see in a superintendent from criteria, because we knew that this point was going to come here. So I came with the expectation that we as board members are prepared for what we want in a superintendent. I know what I want. I'm prepared to go into the criteria, and that's the expectation that I have for other board members as well.
Okay, so no more discussion on the timeline. So we have a motion by Mr. McMillan to proceed with the current timeline, and a second by Ms. Babb. So all in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. So, Ms. Satterfield, do you want to go back to the selection criteria one by one?
All right, so if we can look at the selection criteria one by one, and if anybody, I guess the best format is to say if anybody has any opposition to that criteria, let us know. If not, we'll move on. We'll adopt it, and then we'll move on, and then we'll take one final vote. So, first criteria: one who has demonstrated effective listening abilities and who has a commitment to accessibility and willingness to. Oh, should I go by Daniels? No?
This would be my one suggestion is, I think you said opposition, but I think it's, if we go through it, and you might do it, but if there's something major substantive, you might want listening, but something major, not just wordsmithing it.
Okay.
Then, go ahead and talk about that, because, I do think that I haven't had the ability to read his to say what it is, and so I probably go by this, and then if somebody's got some major thoughts on a way of really crafting it a lot differently, bring it up.
Cool. So, is your light on, Mr. Mike?
I wanted to say something, if I could be recognized. This might not work, but in reference to these things that are redlined, would it be possible for us to just look through, take a few minutes, look through, and we could even do it, like take the first three, and if there's a word that somebody needs to change or feel strongly about, but it appears to me, excuse me, that in some instances, I think, let's see, number 4 is not changed. I don't see any red lines there. But everything else, including the last one over there, where it talks about has demonstrated the ability to work effectively with diverse student populations and multicultural groups within and then he inserts school system and the broader community. Why is that necessary? I mean, everybody in the world that's looking at this would know we're talking about the Knox County school system. It's not like we're talking about something, something that's foreign from that, like a water system or something. It appears to me that somebody went through here and just for the sake of creating fancy language, for lack of a better term, I don't think any of this is necessary, in my opinion. I mean, maybe you could change a word here and there, but, somebody that's going to apply for this, they're going to research it out. If you use a phrase like a visionary leader as opposed to a highly qualified person, do you really think that's going to snap their attention and get them to apply? I don't. But anyway, I just wanted to render my opinion. Thank you for listening.
Ms. Owen?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would suggest for number 1, taking Mr. Watson's suggestion with the exception of the word has, and just begin with exceptional listening skills and continue with a commitment to accessibility and an open door policy.
Ms. Satterfield?
Yes, I think we have to figure out if we're going to vote on either just on the substance and maybe later vote on if we adopt the recommendations from Daniel from each criteria and not the wordsmithing, just so we can get through the selection criteria, because Daniel has recommendations for all of them. So how does the board feel on either voting to adopt Daniel's recommendations, or should we just look at the substance of each criteria versus the wordsmith?
I think we can do both pretty quickly. I mean, it's not going to take any longer to do both.
Okay.
So,
Are we going to vote on, we're going to vote on each one as we go?
that is what the board chooses to do. If somebody can make a motion to adopt that one in second, and we can vote on that individually if we want to.
May I add something here? Is there,
Please.
of the 10 that's listed, does anyone have a problem with any of the 10? Would you like to remove one of the 10? Is there something that you don't like of the 10?
I would like to remove number 2 because the wisdom to know when change is necessary isn't measurable.
So I think it's best to, if it's something we want to remove, if we make a motion to remove it, and then we can vote as a board. How does that sound?
Yes.
Yeah.
I think that's going to move it along.
Yes, so
Why would you want to remove that, Ms. Owen?
Because how would you measure that? How can you say that someone has that? How do you know that?
Does everything have to be
So-
measured?
Well, how do they show us that?
So if we're going to
if this
vote
is
on
our
this, we need to make a motion to remove it and then have the discussion about removing it. So are you making a motion to remove item 2?
Sure, motion to remove item 2.
And do we have a second? Okay, so that motion fails, I guess, or did? No, nobody seconded. Okay, so no second. Mr. Watson did?
No second.
Okay. Okay, so, yeah, so that fails. Okay. So are there any others that anybody wants to make a motion to remove? Let's maybe start there. Okay, and Mr. Watson?
Madam Chair, I agree with where Ms. Satterfield, I think, was going, and that is, and also Dr. Grissom mentioned it too. So the first one is about being a good listener. The second one is about being a change agent, right? Like, can we just go through the 10 and pull out the core concept and say, do we like this or not? Because I don't want us to get hung up in the wording. I mean, the reason I brought wording is because Ms. Satterfield emailed the board ahead of the meeting and asked us to. So I did what was asked, and we changed the wording, that's fine. But there is some substance to each of these 10 things. And I think if we can just highlight what the core concept is and saying yay or nay, that might be helpful.
Right, so Dr. Grissom, would you be so kind as to go through the 10 and just say what that basic
And they already are like
concept.
that. If you'll go to page 29 to the
Okay.
chart, we just simply added to what's listed on the chart. If you go with what's just listed on the chart, the one that came out number 1, ability to listen.
All right,
And
I
if
got
you
it.
just want to say ability to listen, that is good. I'm just telling you on these things, people are just, if you're applying for Knox County schools, you're going to go down through here and go, okay, listen, I do that change. They're not going to look at the wordsmithing. So what you all are asking for is already done on page 29. If we just take the top 10, which that's what I did, I just added to it. That's ability, number 1, if you ability to listen. Number 2 was ability to initiate and adapt to change. Number 3, ability to generate support from community groups. Number 4, effective communication, both oral and written. Number 5, successful classroom teaching experience. Number 6, exhibit strong interpersonal communication skills. Number 7 was goal-oriented, committed to long-range planning. Number 8, exhibit strong analytical and problem-solving skills. Number 9, ability to work with and generate support from the entire board. And number 10, demonstrate sensitivity toward cultural diversity. And guys, I think you really, when we get into the actual interview process, we're going to develop some sample questions for you all that are going to be directly tied to the criteria. That's where you're going to get into the things of addressing is, when you're interviewing a candidate, tell us what you've done to make change. How did you involve others when you made that change? We're going to help you with those questions to get it exactly. But for the criteria, I think if you just use the words on page 29, we will be good.
Very good. Thank you. It was
So, Ms. Horn.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I mean, is it too simplistic just to use these instead of having a sentence? Because I'm a bullet point person. I mean, I think in our society, like, bullet points are great. So this communicates clearly, I
Yes.
think. So would y'all be opposed to that, using this criteria just as it's listed on page 29?
So are you making a motion to adopt
I make a
that?
motion to use the criteria.
Okay,
Let me finish my motion, Mr. McMillan, and then you can second it. I make a motion, that's okay. I make a motion to use the criteria as listed on page 29 in the verbiage, the way it is listed. Is that clear enough?
So we have a motion by Ms. Horn to use the top 10 of the criteria listed on page 29, and as is, and a second by Mr. McMillan. So is there any discussion on that? Ms. Bounds?
I would support that. I do think that in today's world, people just want to, especially if they're looking at it for the first time, they just want to go down through there and see what's expected, what our system wants. And I think, like Dr. Grissom said, there's time for the other later, but I mean, it would also help with Ms. Babbs wanting it done in a flyer form. I mean, this is a whole section and a half that could have been enunciated with 10 things, very simplistic. So I'm not opposed to it, and I kind of like the idea actually for reference point.
Okay, Ms. Horn?
Just a question. I mean, it may be that when Dr. Grissom goes back and looks at this, it may be that the order of something may need to be tweaked a little bit just so that like thoughts are together. I mean, kind of just quickly looking at it, it may not be, but would anybody be opposed to, if she sees something that needs to be tweaked just with an order, is anybody bothered by that? Because
I think I would just list them as order because they're in rank,
so that they're ranked?
Yeah, they
Okay.
are. Number 1,
Okay.
item number 8, got the overall ranking as number one, so that's how I'll list them.
Okay, I think that's great.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Watson?
Thank you. I appreciate the motion. The reason I wouldn't support it is this, Dr. Grissom, tell me if this is what your intent was. I recognize that that list came from that chart, and I recognize that you put them in priority order. But I also recognize that some of the additional language that you added was reflective of other comments. And so if we only use the words in that chart, then what we're saying is that's the only tool we're basing our criteria on. And Dr. Grissom, I thought, did a good job at elaborating on some of those other community feedback and comments in that. And none of these are beyond 3 lines. I appreciate bullet points too. None of these are complete sentences. I would want our criteria to be a little more reflective and true to the overall comments that were made in our community meetings, because I think we invested time and energy in doing that. And we had one public forum speaker that referenced the NAACP letter. This particular wording helps bring all of that together. Again, I don't care if we wordsmith this and change the actual wordings, but to me, the benefit of adding a little bit more to it was you brought in other thoughts and ideas beyond just those hard criteria that were developed out of that one particular tool. So.
And can I add to that? I think that it's important, if I am applying for your job, I'm gonna go look and read this report. And so we
Right.
suggest that to people. You're gonna put it on your website, and we'll say to interested candidates, you need to read the report. And so that's another way they're gonna see what each group said and get all comments by reading that report.
Yeah. And if I were the potential applicant, I would want to see that what the board approved as the criteria is reflective of a lot of what I'm seeing. And I think if we strip out some of that content, I think I might question as an applicant, I wonder how much they really listened to their community through that process. I'm not saying that's our intent in doing it. I know we're just trying to get the word shorter. I get that. I just would appreciate us having an opportunity to involve more of those thoughts and comments. So.
Mr. Dupler, do you have something to add?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just wanted to ask a point of clarification for the board's assistance. Ms. Horn, your motion for page 29, is it to include all of the criteria preference rankings or just those 1 through 10?
Just 1 through 10. I'm sorry, I was not specific.
The highlighted, the top 10 are the highlighted,
Yes.
yes.
So I can make an amended motion if I need to.
I think I said the top 10 when I restated
Okay.
it, but I don't know if that was what.
Ms. Coatney, do you mind reading what the motion is as currently?
I believe your motion, Ms. Horn, was to use the criteria as listed on page 29 and the verbiage the way it is listed, and then Mr. McMillan seconded that motion.
Okay, so I would like to amend my motion to note that it is the highlighted items on page 29.
Top 10.
The top 10, 1 through 10, which are highlighted on page 29.
So, Mr. McMillan, okay. So we have a motion and a second to an amended motion to adopt the top 10 as they are written on page 29.
Yes.
Okay, so more discussion on that, Ms. Babb?
Yes, and I have to say, I kind of go back and forth. I got Ms. Horn's thing, because when I read these, I like the short, quick, whatever. But when I was reading the highlighted top 10, one of the things I was noticing missing was anything about development of staff, which I think is so important in this position. However, if you look at number 6 in here, it says, has the ability to unify as diverse groups, builds and maintains a diverse staff with high morale. But if you just look at number 6 over here, it doesn't get into that. And so that's where I kind of got what you were saying. And then when I started really reading it, listening to him, I do think we're missing some stuff when we just go by the bullets, because I do think how they've done it in here, because that was one of my big things, is I like, gosh, if we just go by the highlighted bullets, like, we're not talking, I think that's a huge job for our superintendent, to develop our staff, bring morale in our staff. you know, and I totally don't see that in the 10 kind of highlighted on here. I mean, I think it's a lot in comments and a lot of stuff like that. So that's where I probably would not then support it after I thought about it a little bit more. And I probably like the more, a little bit more in depth. I'm not saying exactly this wording, but a little bit better descriptors here.
Ms. Satterfield, did you have something?
No, I appreciate Board Member Babb for bringing that perspective up, because it did kind of change my perspective of what I said, the direction that I was going to. But because I was leaning more to the report will be listed on the website and where we live, and so if we did agree to go through just what the criteria says on page 29. Somebody applying for this role should do their due diligence to be able to then speak in the interview to say, this is how I do it. I build, maintain, diverse, in that aspect. However, I do understand it does give more information out, so that changed my perspective when you shared that. So thank you.
Ms. Horn?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think that's a very good point, Ms. Babb, because that's true. That's not in here in other places. So it may be that we could add, I'm not opposed to adding, that to that particular item. So just kind of wanted to say that out there, because I definitely see your point. And I'm really fine either way. I really, it's fine to me either way we do it. So,
Can I make an observation? Sure. So we all agreed that on page 29, we agreed to the top 10. In your brochure, I just elaborated. So if you're good with the top 10 on page 29.
Well, no, I don't.
But what I'm saying is, those were the core concepts you agreed to. In the brochure, we just elaborated and expanded on those concepts. So what I'm hearing is you're probably okay with the criteria that's listed in the brochure. Some of you may want to tweak a sentence or two, right?
No, I
Go ahead.
No, I would like to, once we get through the language, I want to make a motion to make a change to one of the criteria.
Okay.
So I don't know if that, probably won't make it, but I want to
We have
offer it.
Susan's motion on the.
Yeah, we've got a motion, that motion on the floor that we'll have to move forward with first. Mr. Watson, did you have more discussion on that?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. I agree with Ms. Satterfield's comments about the report being public. I think these things serve a slightly two different purposes. In my mind, the report is a collection of data that we gathered about what our community values in a superintendent. This brochure is a codification of that, saying this is what the board is expecting from the superintendent. And so if I just had this report as a potential applicant, all I would see is, all right, here's a lot of what this community thinks they want. I don't necessarily from this report alone have any sense of what the board, who's going to be my employer, actually wants. And so to me, they serve two different functions. Both are needed. And so I think we need to make sure that whatever's in this brochure is us feeling really firm that this is what we as a board want in this, and that we're not relying on somebody just looking at this to try to get some sense of what we want. We need to tell them very clearly what we want. So anyway.
Okay. Ms. Horn?
thank you. I didn't realize my thing was still on, but I think that's a very good point, Mr. Watson, and so I definitely think it's important that we look through these and make sure that these are our expectations. I think that's a really good point. And I'm really fine either way. As far as whether we list these as bullet points, because you're right, Ms. Babbitt, we do leave out a couple of things. So I think that's a very valid point. So, unless there's anybody that feels strongly about this, I'm willing to withdraw my motion so that we just go back to looking at the how it's printed here and go back to that idea. Do I need Mr. Duplo, do I need Mr. McMillan to agree to that? Okay, all right. So I withdraw my motion, and let's just go back to discussing it this way.
We'll turn it back over to Ms. Satterfield, who's our
Chair. I make a motion that we adopt Board Member Daniel Watson's recommendations for the wording of the selection criteria.
Okay, so we have a motion by Ms. Satterfield to adopt the, Mr. Watson's changes to the wording in the selection criteria, and a second by Ms. Henderson. Is there any discussion on that? Okay, Mr. Watson?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would offer a friendly amendment that for the purposes of tonight, we adopt this wording, but we also allow somebody else to copy edit it and to just make sure the grammar is really clear. So,
Okay. Mr. McMillan?
So let me make sure I understand it. We would, according to your motion, we would adopt all the language in these 10 things that Daniel has proposed.
Okay.
No,
Okay, so we have that motion by Ms. Satterfield, a second by Ms. Henderson. And Mr. Watson, are you wanting to make a friendly amendment to that?
yeah, it's just a friendly amendment that we would, after approval, that the board would be comfortable letting a copy editor address any grammatical issues.
Okay. Ms. Horn?
Just a point of clarification, we're discussing only the criteria, the selected 10 criteria at this point, correct?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, so Ms. Coatney, could you read the motion that's on the floor for us?
Yes, so Ms. Satterfield made a motion to adopt Mr. Watson's selection criteria from the edited wording, and the friendly amendment that the wording be allowed grammatical editing. And it was seconded by Ms. Henderson.
Okay, so any more discussion on that?
let's have a roll call.
Okay. So Ms. Coatney, did you do a roll call vote?
Ms. Satterfield? Yes. Ms. Owen?
Yes.
Mr. Watson? Ms. Babb? Ms. Horn? Ms. Henderson? Ms. Bounds? Mr. McMillan? Ms. Christie? That's 8 yes votes and 1 no vote.
So that motion carries. So Ms. Satterfield, if you want to.
Yes. And so I'd like to make a motion that we, for criteria, hold on. For criteria 5, where it says, experience as a teacher who understands the day-to-day operations for the classroom and has sound knowledge of instruction, curriculum, and educational programs that meet the needs of diverse student bodies. I would like to make the motion that we change teacher to, what kind of does it? Oh, that's difficult. Maybe I just won't use good language here. I would like to make a motion that we have a criteria that we have successful experience as a director of schools.
So an additional criteria to the 10,
Well,
or replacing?
I want to replace, because this criteria for 5 is specifically for successful classroom teaching experience. And when we were talking with Susan's recommendation, that's how I formed the motion, but now that we're back to the language, I don't know where it is where it just says teacher, so I was saying recommend experienced teacher as well as experienced and director of schools.
So as well as, okay, I got you.
So not an additional criteria, but as well as experience. So however we word it, my point is successful experience as a director of schools. I make the motion that we add in the criteria, within the 10 criteria, that successful experience as director of schools.
So when you add that to the criteria, I'm only looking now at candidates that are superintendents. So that you may want to make that a minimum then, that, if your minimum is that you're going to require. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. It might not want to be a criteria. You may want it to be a minimum qualification that you must have successful superintendent experience.
So, did we have a second? Okay, so Ms. Satterfield has made that motion. Do we have a second to that motion?
Can we clarify the motion first?
So, yeah,
Yeah.
would you like to?
Is the word teacher in or out?
No, the teacher, oh,
I would leave that one as is. I think if
And
you
move
want
it
to do
to the
yours, you need
minimum?
to add a number 11.
okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Lord have mercy. Okay.
Can I second and make a friendly amendment at the same time?
Yeah, you can
All
help
right.
clarify the
All
motion.
right.
Look, my goal
I-
is to
I'll-
put
I'll
in
second
experienced director
and
of
make a
schools.
friendly amendment. So in the paragraph that I'm suggesting that we strike under the position, the director of schools, that part that's from our policy, my friendly amendment would be that we would add a minimum qualifications of a master degree, and that either a minimum, and also a minimum qualification of prior superintendent experience, or another way, depending on how we feel about it, is to say that prior superintendent experience is preferred. So I would defer to you, Ms. Satterfield, to determine if you want it to be preferred or required, but I would put it in the position statement along with a master's degree.
So what Dr. Grissom was saying for putting it under the minimum qualification. So would you like to clarify that, that motion?
Yeah, so
On
my.
how it will actually read it?
Yeah, so my friendly amendment to your motion would be, in place of the paragraph that says the director of school shall be a person, ... is to say that the minimum requirements is that that the candidate have a master's degree and either a preferred prior experience as a superintendent or a minimum, and I'm leaving that up to you to decide if you'd like to recommend a minimum or preferred.
I accept I would say, I don't know what's going on. I accept the friendly motion. Can we have more discussion on deciding preferred or minimum, Chair? Before I accept it?
Yeah, before she steps it.
You can make a motion that you're going to use either preferred or minimum and then discuss it.
Discuss that,
Yeah.
okay.
I accept the friendly the friendly amendment to the motion of using either preferred or minimum of director of schools.
Okay. So, just to clarify, we have moved on from the selection criteria suddenly. That's over, so we have adopted that. So now we are working on the position. And Ms. Satterfield has made the motion and a friendly amendment by Mr. Watson to add the minimum qualification of a master degree, and we are discussing whether we want preferred or required past experience as a superintendent. Okay, so discussion on this. I do not know who was first. Ms. Bounds, we'll start on your side.
I think they were all first, but I'll go. I don't, and I would like Dr. Grissom's opinion on it. I would prefer to say preferred so that we don't eliminate somebody right out of the gate. I'm okay with minimum, but I don't know, Dr. Grissom, if you, from your prior work with superintendent searches, feel like that one wording is better than another. Would it eliminate a great number to have a minimum? And how do we determine that minimum? Or would it be better to just say preferred?
Are we talking about just the superintendent's experience?
Yes, adding the director having experience as director of
There's a
schools.
big difference between saying superintendent experience required and preferred. Preferred leaves it open for ones that don't have it. When you say superintendent required, if I got 100 candidates and only 2 have superintendent experience, I'm only looking at 2. When you say required.
I would think further into if we said preferred, and I think we had the hours and hours of discussion before about preferred master's or preferred doctorate or whatever. So I really like the preferred better because I think further into it, those candidates will separate themselves, and I think we'll be able to tell. I understand the importance with a system as large as ours to have experience as a director of schools, but I think preferred leaves us open to that, but it doesn't limit us to that. And I'm afraid when we start trying to put minimum requirements on it, that it's going to narrow our search in the beginning rather than the end, and I'd rather see it narrowed at the end. That's my thoughts, but.
A majority of the boards have in their policy the minimum qualifications of a master's degree. That's pretty common. Now, a different point is the superintendent experience. I've not done any searches lately that have said superintendent's experience required. It's not to say you can't do that. I'm just telling you that if you have superintendent experience required, that's the first thing our screening committee, we're gonna just, if you don't have it, we'll set you aside. That they won't even be considered because that's required.
And can I just ask a quick question in regards to that? So when you do say superintendent required, I mean, you might get applications from superintendents of districts that might only have 2 or 3 schools.
Right.
Right? And it would, I guess, what you're saying is disqualify someone who might be, you know, in central office or in a leadership role in a system that has 150 schools, which is a big difference, I guess. And so I see what you're saying with that.
I think when you say superintendent experience, if you say preferred, it's going to be, say I got down to this stack of candidates and they were all pretty equal on everything, but 3 of them have superintendent experience. I'm going to pick them because you said preferred. So they're going to rise to the top if they've got, you know, if I'm trying to narrow it down to 5. So.
Ms. Owen? Mr. Watson?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I could be wrong in saying this, but I just want us to note if we make it required, that probably will prevent any current staff member at Knox County Schools from applying. I don't know that we have any other staff members in Knox County Schools who have prior superintendent experience. Don't hear me saying I'm going to default to hiring somebody from Knox County Schools. That's not what I'm saying. But I'm saying if we want to be open to looking at internal candidates, if we say prior superintendent experience, again, I could be wrong. I don't know the histories of all of our staff members, but I don't think any other current staff members have prior superintendent experience. I just want to point that out there for the board to take into consideration when they decide.
Ms. Beth?
Yeah, I don't support required because I sort of look at, we just look even around us. There are some tiny little counties that, I mean, we have principals that have more responsibility than those superintendents do. And so I think, you know, what we're looking at more and where I really look at is people that are coming from diverse backgrounds. I mean, all of a sudden you're knocking out somebody that comes from a big experience, a big system that's got a lot of experience with, you know, a lot of very diverse people, and they would be knocked out over somebody from some tiny little community just because they have superintendents. So I do think it's too restrictive. I don't mind the preferred, and I think obviously we got to have somebody with experience coming in here. We've got to have somebody really highly qualified coming in here. But I think the required is going to be too restrictive and could cut some good people out and might make somebody rise to the top that really isn't fitting what we want just because of that one word.
Ms. Horton?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I could not support required either. I would want to support preferred because basically because of all the comments that everybody's already said. So thank you.
Okay. Mr. McMillan?
I was just wondering, I don't think that we've ever had anybody that was a superintendent prior to being here. Now, they may have been an assistant in a big system, but that goes all the way back, since I'm so old, I go all the way back to Mildred Dole. And, you know, she was superintendent for something like 32 years. And I don't remember whether she was appointed by the county commission quarterly court in that day, or whether she was straight out elected as far as the position. But since then, to my knowledge, the others have always always been assistants. And that, would you care to comment on that, Bob?
Yes, sir. You're pretty much right. I think Dr. Lindsay might have been the only.
Oh, I forgot about him.
Yeah,
I forgot about him. I'm sorry. I forgot. I stand corrected.
So, do you want to accept his amendment, or are we talking about the language of required versus preferred?
I was about to.
So, you can restate.
Yeah, I was gonna restate the amendment with my changes that I will accept from my amendment. Is that cool, Gary? Okay. Yeah, I'm gonna accept my own changes. I make the motion that we add to the criteria minimum qualifications of a master's degree and a previous director of school experience is preferred.
Okay. So. Is preferred,
It's
not
preferred.
versus required.
So we're adopting the preferred, not required.
And that's not going under criteria. Yeah.
Want me to reiterate it? Okay, all right. So I make the motion that we adopt the minimum qualifications of a master's degree and director of schools preferred.
From a point of order, I think I made the original second, so do I need to be the one to second that? I second that change.
Okay. Mr. Chen?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just for ease of understanding, would it be possible to add preferred before that to make it easier?
What's the word that help? Help!
May I say something? I think we just need to make it simple under the position. We're just gonna say master's degree required, superintendent experience preferred.
I make the motion that under the position, we say master's degree required, superintendent experience preferred.
And Mr. Watson, your second is good with that? Okay. So, Ms. Coatney, will you restate the motion so we can, just to make sure everyone's clear on what we're voting on? Mr. McMillan?
Should we since we're working so much on clarity here, should we put preferred but not required, just to be sure that everybody understands it?
Mr. Watson? Okay. So Ms. Coatney will restate this motion.
Okay, the motion is to list under the position that a master degree is required and that superintendent experience is preferred but not required.
Okay. So all in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Ms. Satterfield? Is there anything?
I want to lift up, I did move us to the requirements and when we were still on selection criteria. So is there anything from the selection criteria that anybody wants to change or lift up before we move forward? We already did it, but I kind of moved us out of it by my motion. So I want to come back to that quickly.
I'm not making this in the form of a motion. I just would say on number 2, Daniel, by the way, let's back up. You did a really good job, and I don't see a lot of changes, just it flows and the words are better. But I really don't like, even in the face of opposition, I know what he's trying to say there, but I just feel like that's such a negative thing. It's
Two.
number 2. I would just like to strike, I don't know, whether I have to make a motion or,
Well, we've already approved those,
yeah,
so
you've
we
already
would.
approved them, but whatever. I just think that's very negative sounding.
The district, are we, so moving on to the section. Oh, okay. So moving on to the section titled the district. I think Mr. Watson had some proposed changes there that we received. Is that right? Is there a motion to approve that or adopt changes to that? Or any discussion? Want to move forward, Ms. Horn?
Madam Chair, I wonder if we should look at the system facts section first, because that kind of may change what we adopt for the district section. Possibly. I mean, it's not, maybe it doesn't. I was just thinking that we could list, I guess my thought was in saying that we may want to list the 9,000 employees down under system facts, like we may want to take it out of the section that Mr. Watson has suggested and move it down to system facts, so it may be more beneficial to look at that first. So if I could make a motion to adopt the system facts as presented, but adding the 9,000 employees and possibly even the third largest employer, but we could talk about that.
Can I ask a clarifying question before we ask for a second? I don't know if that's okay. So, Ms. Horn, the only reason why I removed the system facts is because all of them except for the teacher number is already described in the description, in the district description. I just didn't think we needed to repeat it. So like the budget number is already there, it's like it's twice. So I'm good with either section we put it in. I just don't know that we need to take the space and list those facts twice, once in paragraph form and once in a bulleted list form. So my only intent was to, since they're already in the paragraph, is let's use that space for something we didn't get to include, like the student demographics. My main suggestion is we don't put it in 2 places. I just think that's a waste of space.
And it wasn't in 2 places, but some folks had sent me some changes, and I put in the changes and edits, and that's how you get multiple when people are sending.
So the version we got, though, did
Yeah.
have it in 2 places.
But I can say, we can add both. If we're, we can include the system facts and the student demographics, and if you want to take it out, I don't think it hurts to leave it in that paragraph form as well, but just don't think you have to, we've got space. We'll make it work to put all that in it.
So it may even be better to refine the district piece a little bit and leave the system facts and maybe even add the demographics as you have it here. You know, maybe that's what we need to do, is just kind of, I think maybe what we ought to do is kind of decide what we want and then let Tammy format it so that it includes all the information that we want to see in there. Can we do that?
So are you, in your motion, are you making a motion to add the student demographics?
Yeah, I think that would.
But not specifically saying where to add them, as long as they're in here and only in here once.
I guess my motion would be to leave the system facts in a bullet point format as it is, and then add the demographics that Mr. Watson has noted with the correct demographics that we currently have.
Okay, so do we have a second on that?
Because we talk about the teachers, and I just think it wouldn't be bad to put the demographic just to of our whole staff. I mean, I think it is kind of, I mean, we bring it up that we're a major employer, but I think the teacher and
I agree, yeah.
Whether it's just one
Both.
fact of that we've got this much staff, or breaking it out, teachers and
Definitely.
non-classified, because, I mean, I think it is kind of, it's a huge job. Yes, I think it's all just depending on where we're formatting it. Like, that's where I'm trying to look at too many different things. But I think in his new one, he's got it in the paragraph form, whether it's in paragraph or bullets. Once again, I'm a bullet person. As far as like data goes, like numbers and stuff like that, I do think it's easier to read. Kind of where she's got it down as system facts, to me, that's so much easier to read it there than when you've got it in paragraph form. So I personally like that. I mean, I just think it's an easier read as far as the bullets.
Okay, Mr. Watson?
I agree with that. I think listing those system facts as a bulleted, in the bulleted format is much easier to consume. And that little bit of paragraph space we would lose by removing those, I wouldn't keep them in both places, I just don't think you need them, is use that description, that district description to be a little bit more inspirational, maybe elaborate more on our strategic plan. So like student achievement and creating a positive culture was left off. I added it back in, but we could take that district description, the few words that we'll lose by removing those system facts, and just within it bullet pointing the 3 areas of our strategic plan. So again, you had the district description, remove the system facts that are already duplicated in the list, add the one about 9,000 employees because it doesn't exist there already in the system facts, and then use that saved space to elaborate a little bit on the strategic plan through some bullet points along with the student demographics.
Go ahead, Ms. Satterfield.
Thank you.
Right.
So I'll second your motion.
Okay.
Then we can do discussion.
Thank you.
And so my question, I don't know how system facts is, like, I feel like system facts and districts is the same thing.
I agree.
And so I think that system facts, and I understand the bullet point, and I think that can be fine, but system facts, from when I'm reading this, it feels like I'm reading, well, what is the district if it's not the system facts that's there? So I support that, and I would like to see, so moving system facts all under district and however that format looks like. And then I would also like to see the demographics. So instead of system fact bullet, maybe that just be demographics of our school system. And that could be teachers and students. But what's under the system facts now is describing the district, in my opinion.
Ms. Horn?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Okay, maybe what we need to do, what if we did this? What if we have Knox County Schools as a diverse school system with urban, suburban, and rural schools? Then have the paragraph, Knox County Schools, or we are, whatever you want to say, is committed to providing all students, that paragraph, and we could add, if there are pieces of the strategic plan that are missing, you could add it to that paragraph, and then list all of the facts together, so that you're going to add the, I definitely want to make sure we add all of the employees, like Ms. Babb said, and whatever else may be missing that Mr. Watson had noted, but have all of that under system facts, so that we have a paragraph and then the bullet points. That's kind of what sounds like maybe would be more efficient, and get kind of everything that we want.
Ms. Henderson?
I really like that suggestion by Mrs. Horn. I think that would make it cohesive. I think it would flow well. And I really like Mr. Watson's suggestion to highlight a little bit more of the strategic plan, because I did notice student achievement wasn't in there, so thank you for putting that in. So I really like both of those suggestions.
Ms. Satterfield? Did you have? Okay, so we have a motion by Ms. Horn. Can you restate that motion? Or we might need clarification, or?
Can I just
Yes.
do a new
Yeah.
one based on what we've talked about? Okay, so I think I would amend my motion to read Knox County Schools is a diverse school system with urban, suburban, and rural schools, then including the paragraph, adding the piece about student achievement, and then to system facts, we would want to make sure we list 9,000 employees, and we can break out the teacher piece if the board would like to. Also listing in that system facts bullet point section that we're the third largest district in Tennessee.
And the strategic plan stuff.
Yes, and making sure the strategic plan information is included with the paragraph, right?
And who's going to decide what that is?
Yeah, specific. Okay.
Okay, so we could use Mr. Watson's language where he's added those two pieces.
Right. So in Mr. Watson's document, under the district, it's in that third paragraph.
Yes, so taking Mr. Watson's third paragraph. Is that clear?
Can you restate it one more time?
Sure. Ms. Coatney, did you get it? Do you want to restate what you have, or do you want me to say it again? I'm happy to do either.
So to keep the paragraph that Knox County Schools is a diverse school system, including urban, suburban, and rural schools, and then adding the language from the strategic plan to hit the three highlights of that, and to list the facts and demographics to include the third largest district in Tennessee.
Yes, and also, if you could reflect in the motion regarding the strategic plan information that we're going to use Mr. Watson's language from his document. And then also, I believe I said that let's include all our employees, so 9,000, with over 9,000 employees.
And the student demographics.
And
as
also
well.
adding the student demographics.
Not as written, though.
Not as
The
written, but the
updated,
current
correct ones,
updated
yeah.
student demographics. I think that's everything.
Did you get that, Ms. Coatney? Okay, so do we have a second on that? So we have a motion by Ms. Horn, a second by Ms. Satterfield. And again, for clarification, Ms. Coatney, if you will read that back to us.
So the motion is to keep paragraph 1 under the district section, but to add that it is included urban, suburban, and rural schools, to use Mr. Watson's second paragraph, which highlights the strategic plan bullet points, to include all of the facts and student demographics that are listed, and to include the third largest district in Tennessee, that we have over 9,000 employees, and to also make sure that student demographics are up to date.
Okay. So we have a motion by Ms. Horn and a second by Ms. Satterfield. Is that correct? So all in favor, say aye. 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 Any opposed? Motion carries. Ms. Satterfield?
Turn to the back and look at the community.
So, Mr. Watson, discussion on the community section.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Ms. Satterfield, I believe in an email that you sent us, you said the chamber was working on a new description. Is that correct for the community?
Thanks, Daniel.
Well, the only reason I ask is because I would make a motion that we just approve with whatever they come with. but-
Well, I don't know. Go ahead.
Well, I'll just bring up, a little bit was in reaction to, we got the first brochure, and it was a different description, and that's when we were at a meeting, I was in a meeting yesterday with the chamber, and then when we got this, and this seemed a more accurate description. I did get a brief little synopsis, and I'm happy to share it, and I can do it. I didn't have as much problem. The first one we got was about Farragut. I mean, as much as I like Farragut.
I had nothing to do with that.
Yes. I think it was a brief thing, so I think that's where we were like, okay, we're getting a new one, but then we received this, and it was edited, and I felt like this was a better description, so I think that's a little bit of the explanation.
Yeah, my apologies. I didn't even look at the first one because the second one came so close afterwards, so I didn't realize it had already been changed.
Okay, so any more discussion on the section titled Community? Would anyone like to make a motion to adopt this section? Okay, so a motion by Ms. Henderson to adopt the wording under the section Community as is. Do we have a second? Second by Ms. Bounds. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Ms. Satterfield?
All right, moving on to the application process. Dr. Grissom, did you say that, just for questioning, will we be removing the number 3 bullet point?
No, we ask for folks, if they're coming, if they've got principal endorsements, we'd like to see it, or if they're coming from another state, what they have. So, no, this is really for our office, the application process, because everything will be coming through us. And this is what we ask this of all of our searches. So really, the application process is really for our office purposes.
Oh, I need more clarification a little bit, because if I'm a candidate, so this will not be on the brochure?
Yes.
Okay, so if I'm a candidate and I see this and I don't have I don't have license, I will be discouraged to apply. But we don't need it for the state of Tennessee, given that it's just a bachelor's,
No,
right?
we're just saying if you have endorsements or certificates or in any other state licenses, share them with us. But we can take that out if you don't want it.
I'm just trying, when I read this, I read that I need qualifications.
We can, it's no problem to remove it.
I think if we want to, if they do have it, if we want to see it, I think we can say, if you have any certificates or license, please submit them. And I get what you're saying, the way it currently reads, it looks like it's kind of a requirement. But, yeah, but it does seem like if they have them, we want them, right? Yeah.
You want to leave it in?
Okay.
It doesn't
So-
matter. We're going to research
Ms.
the folks anyway, but.
So, Ms. Satterfield, are you making a motion to Ms. Horn?
Thank you. Can I just have some clarification? So basically, on number 3, it says a copy of the candidate's Tennessee or other state's license and certifications. So basically, you're asking that they submit that, but
It'll be their teacher license or their professional, that, there's not a superintendent
Right.
license per se.
But I mean, that's something that you're gonna have to verify anyway
Well.
to make sure that they meet our requirements.
How about if we change it to professional, any professional licenses or certificates?
Yeah.
Just submit it, and I think that way it doesn't get into the states.
Yeah.
And anything that they have that is a professional
Yeah,
license
I think
or
that's a good
certificate,
suggestion.
we're asking them to do
I think
it.
they should submit that.
And I think that's just a more general and doesn't get into the confusion
Yeah.
over
I
our
think that's a
state
great
stuff.
suggestion.
Yeah.
Okay, so are you making a motion to change that?
I'll make a motion to say, submit a copy of any professional certificates, licenses, or endorsements, whatever the phrases are, applicable, we don't, any applicable licenses, certificates, endorsements, I don't know what the other
Yeah.
educational type things are that people have.
Second.
I got it.
Okay. So we have, under the application process, a motion by Ms. Babb to change number 3 to a copy of any applicable certificates or
Professional certificate.
professional. Help us with the wording here, Dr. Grissom.
I think she said any applicable professional
Licenses,
licenses or
certificates,
certifications.
Okay.
and I don't know if endorse, I don't know what all the
Yeah.
correct thing is for
That'll cover it.
educational people.
Okay.
That'll cover it.
But I do want to bring up, because this is where I brought up that last paragraph, or the second to last paragraph, where it just says board, and I just want some,
So
I just think one of
I
them needs to
made
be.
do we want to vote on this one first
Well,
and
that's
then?
what I didn't know, if we wanted to vote on everything in this section, or if we wanted to divide it up. And I
Okay,
don't-
okay, go ahead then.
Yeah, I just, in that paragraph, I think at least one time in front of the board, it just needs to say Knox County School,
Uh-huh.
just as
Yeah,
clarification.
I made that note.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and so I didn't know if we needed to vote on it at the same time.
All right. I would like to make add additional language at the bottom where it says Knox County Schools is an equal opportunity employer. I will also like to add candidates from groups traditionally underrepresented in public schools leadership are encouraged to apply.
And it was an and?
Or you can do the grammar. Candidates from groups traditionally underrepresented in public school leadership are encouraged to apply. Is that
So,
right?
Is this a friendly amendment? It's to-
Yeah.
Do we have a second? Okay, we're doing the whole thing at once. Okay, so this is your motion.
We're just adding to this.
Adding to that
Okay.
section.
Oh, yes. Okay, I will accept that addition to my motion.
So do we have
And
any
I'd
other?
ask you to read it again slowly so I can get it.
Yeah, and if there's better wording, please help me, board members, okay?
Ms. Babb, did you have
Um,
something else?
I had a comment about
Okay.
Okay, so my wording, candidates from groups traditionally underrepresented in public school leadership are encouraged to apply.
From groups.
Is there clear wording is that clear? Okay.
Ms. Babb?
My only comment to Ms. Satterfield would be, I think because you're adding this is why we don't want to put required superintendent, because I think you're really trying to have a wide net of people, and I think that's where preferred is a better wording on the other part.
Okay, so we have a motion on the floor by Ms. Babb, a second by Ms. Satterfield, and Ms. Coatney, if you will be kind enough to restate those changes.
So the motion is to change bullet point 3 under the application process to submit copies of any applicable professional licenses or certifications, to clarify that the board referred to in the first paragraph under the bullet points would include that this is the Knox County Board of Education's process, and then to also include the language under Knox County Schools as an equal opportunity employer, that candidates from traditionally underrepresented groups in public school leadership positions are encouraged to apply.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second. Is there any more discussion? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries.
All right, I think that concludes the review of the brochure and the criteria. Is there, yeah, we're done. Okay, so then let me stop. Okay, so our next, what's next?
Only
Dr.
thing
Grissom?
left is if you want to, is page 4, if you want to decide on the procedures. Or if you want to talk about that later.
Yeah, well, no, we need to talk
Yeah,
about
let's
it
talk
now.
about it now. So let's move to page 4.
So page 4 on procedures, I know the biggest thing that we talked about was changing the 3 candidates. So I make the motion that we open up recommendations for the procedures, with the first one being refer up to 5 candidates.
Okay, so a motion by Ms. Satterfield, page 4, item 1, change 3 to 5 candidates.
Up to 5 candidates.
Up to 5 candidates, and a seconded by Mr. Watson. So are we going to do this one at a
Any
time?
changes?
Ms. Horn?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a question about that, Dr. Grissom. So if we change that to 5 candidates that we would want you to refer to us, so then can you walk us through what the process would be? Would we then look at the 5 candidates and decide if we want to interview all 5, or would we be saying we want to, and if you have 5 you're recommending to us, that we would interview all 5?
It's typically, when you've hired us to screen and recommend, you're going to interview those 5. But, you know, you can do what you want. I'm just doing the legwork for you all, but typically how our process works, you hired us to screen, to narrow the candidates down, so you've asked us to bring up to 5, and that would mean you would interview those 5.
Can we just have some conversation around what, the reason for 3 versus 5?
Okay. Mr. Watson?
Can I make thank you, Madam Chair. So, Ms. Horn, I just want to make a clarifying statement, and Dr. Grissom, correct me if I'm wrong. The second sentence in that says the board may accept or reject any of the candidates recommended by TSBA.
Yeah.
So that could happen prior to interview, right? We could get that list of 5 and say, sorry, don't want to interview that one. And so the reason I like the idea of 5 is I think it opens us up to more possibility, and I still think there's flexibility in the process to not be forced to interview 5 if we don't want.
Well, you asked me what typically happens. Just most all of our searches, if you ask for 5 or if you ask for 3, the board will interview those. Have boards in the past, I brought them 5 and them say, oh, we don't want to interview this person. Very rare, but you can. I mean, it's your decision what you do. I just don't think you ought to get into, if we're going to choose this process and we tell everybody you're going to go through TSBA, they're going to screen. It's just when I bring you the 5, then if somebody says, oh, I want to add John Doe, and then somebody over here says, I want to add, then you're going to get up to 6 or 7, 8 candidates. So I think that's why we put no new names may be submitted. You agree up front. This is what we're going to do. Any interested candidate applies through TSBA.
Okay, so, well, just for some clarity, Mr. Dufour, we have had this discussion at past board meetings about this. If you could weigh in on that.
I have a question for Dr. Grissom. On the last sentence on number 1 says new names may not be submitted by board members, Dr. Grissom. So by that sentence, are you saying that, let's say that TSBA provides the top 5 and the board members don't necessarily have an issue with that, but let's say a board member wants to bring up number 6 on your list and, and there's a discussion and the board eventually votes to bring up number 6, are you saying that that's not allowed at that
I
point?
think we're talking about new names, folks that didn't even apply. I'm going to hand over all applicants the night I bring you the 5. If there's 50, I'm going to hand you the board chairman all 50. I'm saying no new names above that. You just can't say, oh, so and so. I just heard from Arkansas would be great. I want to add.
That's. I was hoping you would say that.
Yeah.
So I mean, we just need to make that clear in the wording that that's exactly what you all are doing. Yeah.
Okay. So, Ms. Babb?
Yeah, Tammy, I think I'm the one that brought up the 5 at one of our meetings because when we were just saying 3, I felt like I always feel like in anything there's usually kind of a natural cutoff. And I just was thinking if there are, say, 4 that are just superstars, I didn't want y'all to be the ones that cut somebody out because we had decided on 3. And that's where I sort of was troubled with and liked the 5. Not necessarily that I think there need to be 5, but if there is a natural cutoff and it is 3 that are great, then let's take the top 3. But if the cutoff is really that there are 4 that seem to rise to the top, and so I don't know how to convey that to y'all, and that was my intent, was not necessarily to say that we definitely have to have 5, but it could be up to 5.
Yes, and I will say this, I will not bring you 5 if I don't feel good about 5. If we only feel good about 3, we're going to bring you 3. We may feel good about 4, or we may only feel good about 2.
I just didn't want to limit it by the number.
Yeah.
There might have to be, y'all having to choose to cut somebody off because we.
Absolutely. I think the language up to 5 is good, that gives me the, not feeling like, I don't want to waste your time, and I don't want to waste the candidate's time.
I don't want to interview 5 just for the sake of
Yeah,
5.
yeah, absolutely.
Ms. Owen?
Thank you, Madam Chair. For clarification, if TSBA brought us 3 and there was still someone in that original list, we could vote as a board to bring them back, correct?
Ms. Horn?
Thank you, Madam Chair. And, I was just thinking about the board may accept or reject any of the candidates recommended. I think we just have to remember that we do all this in public. So we have to be very mindful of, I just want to go on record. if TSBA recommends candidates to us, I feel like we need to be prepared to interview all of those candidates because I just think that's the fair thing to do. So, would you agree, Dr. Grissom, with that? That it makes me nervous to have a list of, you give us a list of 5 and we look at their resumes and we decide to knock one out, and we've done that publicly. If that would bother me. So.
Okay. So we have a motion on the floor. Ms. Coatney, would you?
Yes, the motion is to, for bullet point number 1, under the procedures for TSBA will refer to up to 5 candidates for the board consideration.
And Mr. Dupler, do we need to change the wording to that second or third sentence in that one, or are you good with that?
I would just perhaps suggest, where it says new names, perhaps insert there new names outside of the applicant pool.
So does anyone want to take Mr. Dupler's suggestion and make a friendly amendment to, or did you?
I'll accept that friendly amendment.
Okay. And Mr. Watson, you seconded that? Okay. Okay, Ms. Coatney, if you will read that one more time.
So the motion is to include under bullet point number 1 in procedures that TSBA will refer up to 5 candidates to the board for consideration. The board may accept or reject any of the candidates recommended by TSBA, and new names outside of the applicant pool may not be submitted by board members.
Okay. So all in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Are there any other changes or any more discussion on procedures on page 4? I don't know who was first. Okay, Mr. Watson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Dr. Grissom, before we get into any more detail of this list of procedures, can you just give us a high-level overview and talk about intent and how this process is supposed to flow? I don't want to get into too many more details without kind of getting the sense of what you're trying to accomplish with the process and how it should work.
Once we get this brochure revised, I'm assuming you want me to send it back to all of you all, to the board for review. We'll get that redesigned and laid out, sent back. Once the board approves, we will send out the vacancy brochure to the various groups. We're part of a national association of searchers that includes all the states, and we'll send it out through that group. We send it to current superintendents, we send it to the TOSS organization, we send it to the Ames organization. We have a prospective superintendent's academy. We'll send it to all those graduates from our academy. We also, this is totally up to you all, but we can put it in AASA. Not sure we get a lot from that, but if you choose to, we can put it in that magazine. I'll have to check with them on their deadlines.
Can you say more about that? I'm not familiar with it.
American Association of School Administrators. It's the national organization basically for superintendents, principals, and that type of thing.
And is there a cost to that, I would assume?
Yes, yeah. And so I'll look into that and see if we can get it in time. Sometimes their deadlines don't work with our deadlines. But we're going to ask folks to get their applications turned in us by January the 21st to our office, so we'll have time to bring a screening committee together to screen all the applicants, and our job is to find the applicants that best meet the criteria that the board's adopted. And we will do that, and I will be back here with the finalists on, back to the timeline, February the 9th. Okay. At that point, I'll present the finalists. This board, we talked about the 15th through the 17th, but you all may want to look at that. If you're going to do 5, you need to pretty much start looking at 5 dates that would be good for you all to interview. We're going to suggest a process, not that you have to use it, and I mentioned this in the community meetings, that each candidate comes and spends a day in Knox County. Each candidate comes, and we'll do a sample schedule for you. They'll meet, much like we did with the community meeting schedule, not all of those meetings because you don't know where the candidate out, but let them meet in the morning with central office principals. Let the candidate give a 10 minutes, here's who I am, and then let people ask them questions for 50 minutes. So it's a 1-hour meeting. Then do the same thing, have that same luncheon with that group of folks. Let the candidates give a 10-minute, here's who I am, 50 minutes for them to ask questions. Afternoon, same thing with teachers, and then the actual interview with the board will be that night. Obviously, it's in a public setting, so everyone can observe. We'll also provide you a form. I think it's good for you to pass out at those meetings and at the actual interview, a candidate reaction form. So if I came to the luncheon and I liked a particular candidate, I could make my notes and turn that into you all, just so you can get a feel of what people think about each candidate. I've found that to be very useful to the board. So that's, and then the board will have to decide, once you decide on the interview dates, then you'll have to come back as a board and look at all your notes and decide and narrow it down to, we say 2, and that's part of the process on page 4. The process we suggest is you write your top 2. I think we put it under, number 5.
Mm-hmm.
You list your top 2 choices on a piece of paper and you sign your name. We cannot do secret ballots, but every board member write their top 2 on a piece of paper, sign their name, turn it in for those to be read aloud, and that's how you get your top candidate of who you're going to start negotiating with first. Sometimes you may not work out with if you can't agree with the candidate on your terms or contract or whatever, but that's basically the process. Abbreviated.
Is there specific parts of this process, like, for instance, in number 3, where it says the board will determine the questions to be asked? Do we need to go ahead and set out a schedule relative to the few board meetings we have between now and then? We've obviously seen that this process tonight
Yes,
took a
and
little bit of time.
I promise you, I will send you all the questions. Now that I've got the criteria,
Right.
I will send you questions in advance, so y'all have plenty of time to review them. You can use them if you want to. You can add to them. You can make your own questions up. But we'll provide you questions for each criteria, and we'll give that to you well in advance.
So if we keep our current timetable of the interviews of the 15th through the 17th, or I think there was a comment last meeting to do it the 16th through the 18th because of a board member's conflict, then we would want to approve those at least by our regular meeting in February, right? So is there anything else between now and then that would need to be approved, that we need to be aware of?
You need to be looking at your superintendent's contract if you want to make any changes to that.
Mm-hmm.
I know you have your own board attorney, but we've got a general counsel that we've got a sample superintendent contract. It basically gives you everything but the kitchen sink in it that you can pick and choose things that you want. But our staff is willing, as part of the service, if you want us to look at your contract, just email it to us. We'll be glad to review it and because we're looking at it from the board's perspective and what's best for the board. So if you want to send us your superintendent's contract, we'll be glad for our legal team to review it and make our suggestions. But then you need to be deciding on, a salary range. If you're going to keep it the same, that's another item you need to be discussing.
And at what point so at this point, we have a brochure and a basic process. At what point would a job description enter this, and when would we need to approve that? I would assume that a superintendent would want to see a pretty fleshed out job description through the process, or maybe is that not typical in this type of search? I don't know.
Most boards, the job description is a board policy. Most all the policies most boards' policy manuals, they have their job description is a policy.
So it typically would not be a separate, do we have a job description?
I don't know that you all have one, but it's typically in your job
So
policy manual.
would you recommend, in the absence of a policy that reflects our job description, because it seems like we don't have one, that we need to create one?
Yeah, we can send you a sample.
Right. So that probably would also need to be so given the process, my assumption would be candidates would want to see that way before they possibly get interviewed on the 15th through the 17th. So do we need to try to approve that at our January meeting, a job description then? Is that what you would recommend, Dr.
Yeah.
Grissom, in terms of flow?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
What was the date of your next meeting?
Well, I think
Sorry.
January 5th is the voting meeting, and our work session is January 3rd.
Okay.
Ms. Satterfield?
if I might just to add directly to Daniel's comment, I think, well, I know the search committee will call a special call meeting, and so Terry, if you could find time for all of us to meet before, sometime in January, to where we can discuss superintendent contract questions, salary range, job description, and whatever else. So we'll need to do a special call meeting for that.
Ms. Owen?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Looking at number 5 in the search process, will each board member's name be read along with their 2 recommendations?
Yes, because you can't have secret ballots.
Okay, so that would, Mr. Dubler, does that take care of open meeting?
Yes, I mean, as long as it's all, you know, brought to the public in some form or fashion, yeah, that'd be fine.
Thank you.
Ms. Babbitt?
This was my question about the, and it's on number 5 too, where we don't rank our top 2. I mean, does it ever happen that, that it's the same 2 people? I mean, what happens if basically it's, everybody puts the same top 2 and there's not a differentiation if not ranking 1 and 2?
You just have to revote, cast your vote again so you can get a top candidate.
Okay, I just was wondering, I could see it if we only put 1 down, but with putting 2 down, I
Yeah.
was just curious if it could end up being, you keep having the same 2.
It could.
Okay.
Yeah. You have to revote, yeah.
Ms. Horn?
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is not really part of this, well, I guess it is. So the salary piece, when is that typically, like, if there's a superintendent or somebody that's going to apply to this, when do they become concerned about what the salary is? So what is typical in that situation?
I kind of need to know now a salary range because.
That's kind of what I was
I'm sorry,
thinking.
most people are going to ask you what the salary is. So I either need to tell them what the current salary the salary of the current superintendent, or you all give me a range. I need one or the other because that's always a question. And so I've already been talking and recruiting people. So, for now, I've just been saying, I take it from the state list what you pay now. So if you can get me that, that would be great. If it's going to be different, it'll be helpful.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. So do you have more discussion on this?
No.
Okay, so do we want to address this first? Okay. So we have one change or 2 changes, I guess. Mr. McMillan.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Since we're talking about salary, you may or may not know this, Dr. Grissom. Do you happen to know what the highest salary of a superintendent in Tennessee is?
Not off the top of my head. I think I sent the committee, I sent them all these facts. It's probably Shelby County or Metro Superintendent. I think they may be in the 300s, but I don't have that off the top of my head. But I can get that.
I just wondered that.
Yeah.
Is it Shelby County where the superintendent is an attorney as well?
No, not anymore. This current superintendent's not an attorney.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Ms. Satterfield? Okay, yes, we voted on this.
So we talked about, you said what?
I found the salary document.
Yeah, so the salary document is attached to the last month's meeting, right?
Yes.
November meeting?
She sent a separate email, called Superintendent Salaries.
And
So
that
it's
is also attached to the documents from November.
Yes.
So I'll make a motion that we share salary range for equivalent district size in this region for, I don't know, for the director of school. Is that what you need, Tim? What do you, I'm making the motion to make the range for the size of our district and this region.
Yeah, if that's what you all want to do, or you want to tell me this is what we pay now, and that's what you need to relay to interested candidates, or if the board chooses, you may want to say, no, we'd like for you to say, here is our range.
So I don't want to make a motion. Can I have a discussion without motion, Gary? I just want to talk. Okay, I move to have a discussion. Do we want to do range or share with the current superintendent?
I mean, that's public information anyway.
Right.
But I mean, it communicates differently if a superintendent's salary is not what the range is. And so what are we trying to communicate to our candidates?
Well, we're still discussing it. Do I need to read the salaries from these other districts that was attached to the agenda? Or do we want to have her share of what our current superintendent makes? Where do we want to go from here? Ms. Henderson, did you have something? No, okay. Mr. Watson?
Yes, thank you. Dr. Grissom, what would be a preferred range? Like, I'm sure you don't want to have like 100,000 to 400, right? So,
No, that's a little bit.
yeah, so what's a sweet spot for the range?
You know, I would say,
In terms of gap between high and low is what I'm asking.
yeah, you know, the max, I guess, maybe 50, I don't know, 50,
So maybe a $50,000
Yeah.
range in between?
yeah,
So our current
75, you know.
Our current pay, at least according to the documentation we received from, I believe it came from Dr. Grissom, is $215,867. The highest is Davidson County at $285,000. They have about 81,000 students. And then the second highest is $230,000. Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, I thought these were in order by, but they're not. So Williamson County is actually the highest at $290. It's just at the bottom. I thought it was in salary range order. Oh my goodness. It's alphabetical order, and I was thinking it was in salary order. Yeah, so Shelby at 320, Williamson County at 290, Davidson at 285, Hamilton at 230, and Knox at 215. So we're the fifth highest right now, and we have the third largest district. Sorry, Bob.
Okay. Ms. Owen,
I would be very concerned about giving the range that includes Shelby County and Metro Nashville, especially if we haven't voted on that salary.
I would agree.
Because then
There's-
if we give someone an unrealistic expectation, that's
Yeah.
going to be.
Yeah, that's a significant difference there. Ms. Satterfield? did you-
Yes, no, that I was going to speak to that. So I guess Daniel, do you, okay. I make the motion that we agree to share the current superintendent's salary as the data point for superintendent search.
Do we have a second? Okay, so we have a motion by Ms. Satterfield and a second by Ms. Henderson to share the current superintendent salary with as a data point. So more discussion.
Sorry.
Ms. Babb?
I was just going to make a friendly amendment
Okay.
that we use that number, that hard number that we have, but also make it clear that it's negotiable. I don't want the assumption to be that this will be the next superintendent's pay, but that's the starting point.
Okay.
I got that. Yeah. It's negotiable, and do you want to tell me what salary it is, or you know what, Terry can tell me tomorrow. I'll get that from her.
Ms. Babb?
I'm going to agree with us being the fifth lowest right now. I would hate for people to self-select themselves out because maybe they're already at a higher salary and stuff. So I definitely want it to be, I definitely agree with that.
Yeah.
I kind of wanted to maybe put a range in there, but if everybody wants to do the point, at this point, I think it just needs to be very clear that it's negotiable.
I'll make sure to say that.
Ms. Horn?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, I think it should be noted that when we hired Superintendent Thomas, he specifically wanted he was very modest and wanted a lower salary than what we would have offered had we hired somebody else. So that's one reason why there's a disparity in the number, that ours is so low. So I think we need to be, I guess I'm just a little concerned. I was thinking a range also, Ms. Babb, because of that reason. I'm concerned that if somebody is looking at this and there's a low salary, that they may not apply, so.
Ms. Bounds?
Well, I just think negotiable in the way Tammy words it will take care of that. And I don't want to set real high expectations, and we have to look at the candidates. And since there's an institutional history there, we had, some people felt like way overpaid our previous superintendent, especially with his golden balloon parachute. So as Susan so aptly noted, the superintendent came in at a much, and I guess you and I negotiated that, but he was very modest and wanted what was best for Knox County and did not want an exorbitant. But I think if we just put negotiable, that they will understand that we will be fair. So.
And I'm not gonna print this anywhere. That's just my verbal when I have conversations with folks, so.
Yeah.
Okay. Ms. Horn?
Thank you, Madam Chair. And if we'll make sure that we give Dr. Grissom the accurate number, because I think 215 is an old number. I don't think that's the most current, and it also doesn't include the any other expense or travel and other expenses. And I think our previous superintendent, was probably around 240. So that's quite a difference. And that included the salary and travel and everything. So let's just make sure that we give you the correct number.
Okay. So, Ms. Coatney, will you restate?
So Ms. Satterfield made a motion that the information to be shared would be the current salary as a data point, and with the friendly amendment to make it clear that that number is negotiable. And that was seconded by Ms. Henderson.
So we have a motion by Ms. Satterfield and a second by Ms. Henderson. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Okay, so does that conclude?
Dr. Grissom, is there anything else we need to look at and talk about? You
No,
feel
ma'am.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
So we just want to say thank you so much for taking us through this process. Thank you, board members, for sticking through it and toughing it out tonight to get us on one accord. I appreciate your work. But now that we have an adopted criteria, we can start recruiting candidates. I want everyone to hear me loud and clear that Knox County's Board of Education has not selected our next leader, and that we look forward to receiving a large, diverse pool of candidates. The next steps in the process, we will have a special call meeting to discuss the superintendent contract, questions, salary rank, or we did salary range, and the job description. So look out for an email for Terry to identify the best time for us, and we will.
I think Ms. Babb has the question.
Yeah, I wanted to point out, on our schedule right now, we start the interviews on the 15th, and the reason we had talked about it is actually day, I don't think it's called Day on the Hill, but whatever.
Yeah, our
TSBA.
Legal and Legislative Institute.
It's actually the 14th and 15th where we can all spend Valentine's Day together in Nashville, and that's sweet. But, you know, I'm sure y'all are tied up with the 15th.
Well, I don't participate
Oh,
in
you
the
don't?
interviews, no.
Okay, well, then maybe it doesn't matter. But anyway, we probably need to keep that in consideration if we feel like it's important for our board to be over in Nashville on the 15th. If so, we might want to switch it to 16th, 17th, 18th.
Yeah.
Yes, we agreed to that last one, so we can make those changes in the report.
Yeah, it's already changed
Sorry,
on the
okay,
timeline.
perfect. So yes, thank you so much, board members, and we look forward to continuing on the process, and also encourage anybody in the community that if you know somebody that'll be a good fit for our next superintendent, please encourage them to apply. You heard the criteria, you heard the recommendation. If you know somebody that fits that description, push them and encourage them to apply to be our next school leader. Thank you, Madam Chair.
So now we have our regular agenda. Do we want to take a 10-minute break? So we will come back at 7:25. Okay, we will, Ms. Coatney, if you will start on our regular agenda items.
Item 6, consent agenda.
So a motion by Ms. Horn, a second by Ms. Satterfield. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries.
Item 7A, approve first reading of Knox County Board of Education Policy I-150, gifted and talented as amended.
So moved.
So motion by Ms. Owen, a second by Ms. Horn. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries.
7B, approve first reading to rescind Knox County Board of Education Policy I-220, access to electronic media.
So moved.
So a motion by Ms. Owen, a second by Mr. Watson. Any discussion? All in favor, aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
7C, approve first reading of Knox County Board of Education Policy I-222, internet safety as amended.
So moved.
A motion by Ms. Owen, a second by Mr. Watson. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
7D, approve first reading of Knox County Board of Education Policy I-231, duplicating copyrighted materials as amended.
So moved.
So a motion by Ms. Owen, a second by Ms. Babb. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries.
7E, approve first reading of Knox County Board of Education Policy I-340, promotion, retention, acceleration as amended.
So moved.
So a motion by Ms. Owen, a second by Ms. Babb. Any discussion? Mr. Watson?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Is Dr. Ryswick still here? Okay, can we skip this one and come back to it? Can we,
Where there's a motion.
can I make a motion that we skip this one until Dr.?
He's right there.
Saved by the bell. Dr. Ryswick, we're discussing policy I-340, promotion, retention, and acceleration. I know we've discussed this at policy review, and we also had this on our work session last week. I know I've had some questions in the interim, and I've spoken to Mr. Myers and also to yourself, and just would like a little bit of explanation about the impact of this. One, that some explanation about why this is being added relative to the law that was passed, and also any explanation about the potential impact and/or deficiencies in this relative to students with special needs.
Thank you, Mr. Watson. So this is actually a law that was passed that goes into effect for 22-23. So we're a year ahead of that. So it won't be this current year's third graders, but it would be for next year's. And we felt like, just as a staff and I think as a board, that it's good to kind of give families that lead time, knowing they may have to make some decisions going into that so they're not surprised next year when that happens. So basically, the law that was passed requires any student who does not score proficient on the English language arts portion of their TCAP in third grade to be retained. The state has a few allowances for that. First would be students who have not received 2 years of English language. If they're ELL students and have not received that intervention for 2 years, it would not apply to them. But then there are three options for students who don't score proficient. One would be to retake and show proficiency prior to the start of their fourth grade year. That we're assuming that would be through a state test. We currently don't have as much guidance on how that will work. Again, the state has some time to get that to us. The second would be to attend the summer learning camps, which are 6-week camps. We ran those last year, and we'll run those again this year. And so students could do that. But while they're there, they have to have a 90% attendance rate, and then they have to take a post-test to show proficiency there. And then the third would be option for students would be they could go on to fourth grade, but they would have a Tennessee All-Core tutor assigned to them. And again, we don't know quite all the regulations of that, how many hours a week or those sorts of things that would be there, but they would have that tutor. And then at the end of the fourth grade, if they were still not proficient, they would be retained then in fourth grade. So that's just for overall. Our understanding right now, and talking with Mr. Myers as he's talked to folks in the State Department to get guidance, is that applies to all students, and that would include students with 504s or IEPs. So Our understanding, again, I say right now, because we know lots of times laws can change and things can happen over the course of time before they're put into place. But our understanding right now is the function of the IEP team or the 504 team would be to obviously continue those interventions prior to a student taking those tests in third grade. But if it does come that they're not proficient, that they would, be part of the conversation around the interventions that would happen for that child, trying to get them proficient by the end of the fourth grade. I would also say this: I have Michelle Flynn here from one of the supervisors in our student support program, and I'm sure she'd be happy to answer questions if there are further questions around that.
Yes, Ms. Flynn, would you mind speaking to any potential negative impacts on students with IEPs and 504s relative to this policy that's being dictated by law?
Sure, thank you. As far as the negative impact, I mean, I think that, again, I support what.
Would you mind pulling the mic a little closer?
Sure.
Thank
I
you.
support what Dr. Roswick stated as far as the IEP teams would work, and we would look at, through the IEP team process, any adjustments that may need to be made for those students that were prior to even the retention decision that were considered to be at risk for potential that impact of that retention as a third grader, and make some adjustments as necessary. As far as the potential negative effects, I think our students with IEPs or 504s, the same research-based information that is out there for retention just for students in general would apply to them as well.
Mm-hmm. Are you, I didn't ask you to be prepared with this, but can you speak to any of that research from your understanding, or would you not?
Not off the top of my head.
Yeah, thank you.
Sure.
I appreciate that. So I appreciate the clarifications, and I just want to make sure that the public understands that the reason why this policy is being recommended to be changed right now is because of state law. I know for myself, in my vote, it doesn't, whether or not I vote to approve or not, is not reflective of my belief in the practice of retention or not, but that this is a law that's been handed down by the state. So,
Thank you. So any more discussion? So we have a motion by Ms. Owen and a second by Ms. Babb. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries.
Item 7F, approve first reading of Knox County Board of Education Policy I-341, Uniform Grading Policy as amended.
So moved.
So motion by Ms. Owen, a second by Ms. Horn. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries.
7G, approve first reading to rescind Knox County Board of Education Policy J121, attendance of non-resident students.
So moved.
So motion by Ms. Owen, a second by Ms. Horn. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries.
7H, approve first reading of Knox County Board of Education Policy J122, compulsory attendance ages as amended.
So moved.
So a motion by Ms. Owen, a second by Ms. Horn. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries.
7I, approve first reading of Knox County Board of Education Policy J150, school admissions as amended.
So moved.
So motion by Ms. Owen, a second by Mr. Watson. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries.
7J, approve first reading of Knox County Board of Education Policy J152, student transfers within the system as amended.
So moved.
So motion by Ms. Owen, a second by Ms. Horn. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries.
7K, approve first reading of Knox County Board of Education Policy J153, sibling priority admission as amended.
So moved.
So motion by Ms. Owen, a second by Mr. Watson. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries.
7L, approve first reading of Knox County Board of Education Policy J190, Code of Behavior and Discipline as amended.
So moved.
So motion by Ms. Owen, a second by Ms. Horn. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries.
7M, approve first reading of Knox County Board of Education Policy J191, Misbehaviors and Disciplinary Options as amended.
So moved.
A motion by Ms. Owen, a second by Ms. Horn. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries.
Item 7N was withdrawn. Item 7O, and Madam Chair, I believe we have public forum on this item. It is approved first reading of Knox County Board of Education Policy J260, dress code as amended.
Yes, we have.
Do we have a motion before the?
So we have one person signed up for public forum for this item. Stephanie Anderson? Stephanie Anderson? That's it.
So do we have a motion to approve?
So moved.
So motion by Ms. Owen, a second by Ms. Horn. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries.
7P, approved first reading of Knox County Board of Education Policy J281, alternative school services as amended.
So moved.
So motion by Ms. Owen, a second by Ms. Horn. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries.
7Q, approved first reading of Knox County Board of Education Policy J340, student insurance program as amended.
So moved.
So motion by Ms. Owen, a second by Ms. Horn. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries.
7R, approved first reading of Knox County Board of Education Policy J350, school health services as amended.
So moved.
So a motion by Ms. Owen, a second by Ms. Horn. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries.
7S, approved first reading of Knox County Board of Education Policy J351, physical examinations and immunizations as amended.
So moved.
So a motion by Ms. Owen, a second by Mr. Watson. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries.
7T, approved first reading of Knox County Board of Education Policy J352, medication as amended.
So moved.
So a motion by Ms. Owen, a second by Ms. Horn. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries.
7U, approved first reading of Knox County Board of Education Policy J353, acquired immune deficiency syndrome, AIDS as amended.
So moved.
So a motion by Ms. Owen, a second by Ms. Horn. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries.
7V, approved first reading of Knox County Board of Education Policy J354, glycogen administration as amended.
So moved.
So a motion by Ms. Owen, a second by Ms. Horn. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries.
7W, approved first reading of Knox County Board of Education Policy J355, guidelines for managing life-threatening allergies as amended.
So moved.
A motion by Ms. Owen, a second by Ms. Horn. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries.
7X, approved first reading to rescind Knox County Board of Education Policy J356, guidelines for managing life-threatening food allergies.
So moved.
A motion by Ms. Owen, a second by Mr. Watson. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries.
7Y, approved first reading of Knox County Board of Education Policy J357, student communicable diseases as amended.
So moved.
A motion by Ms. Owen, a second by Ms. Horn. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries.
7Z, approved first reading of Knox County Board of Education Policy J358, adrenal insufficiency as amended.
So moved.
A motion by Ms. Owen, a second by Ms. Horn. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries.
7AA, approved first reading of Knox County Board of Education Policy J390, child custody parental access as amended.
So moved.
So motion by Ms. Owen, a second by Ms. Horn. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries.
7BB, approved first reading of Knox County Board of Education Policy J391, power of attorney for care of a minor child as amended.
So moved.
A motion by Ms. Owen, a second by Ms. Horn. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries.
7CC, approved first reading of Knox County Board of Education Policy J421, heat illness prevention as amended.
So moved.
A motion by Ms. Owen, a second by Mr. Watson. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries.
7DD, approve first reading of Knox County Board of Education Policy J430, School Nutrition Program as amended.
So moved.
Motion by Ms. Owen, second by Ms. Horn. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries.
7EE, approve first reading of Knox County Board of Education Policy J552, Student Educational Records as amended.
So moved.
Motion by Ms. Owen, second by Mr. Watson. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries.
7FF, approve first reading of Knox County Board of Education Policy J580, Student Suicide Prevention as amended.
So moved.
Motion by Ms. Owen, second by Ms. Horn. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries.
8A, approve receipt of federal funds through the Tennessee Department of Education Child and Adult Care Food Program Emergency Operational Cost Reimbursement Program in the amount of $14,442.77.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Watson, second by Ms. Owen. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries.
8B, approve receipt of federal funds through the Tennessee Department of Education Pandemic EBT Administrative Cost Grant in the amount of $5,814.
Motion by Ms. Horn, a second by Ms. Satterfield. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries.
8C, approve receipt of Tennessee Department of Education Startup and Expansion STEM grants for Farragut, Powell, and South Dole Middle Schools in the total amount of $29,285, and Career and Technical Education Career Exploration grants for Carter and South Dole Middle Schools in the total amount of $20,000 to be used as outlined in each school's proposal.
So motion by Ms. Horn, a second by Mr. Watson. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries.
8D, approve Tennessee Environmental Education Association grant in the amount of $300 for South Dole Middle School to be used for stepping stones and benches in the school's outdoor classroom.
So motion by Mr. Watson, a second by Ms. Horn. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries.
9A, approve grant with Fincham Sports Floors LLC for gym floor repair, refinish, and replacement services for the term of January 1, 2022 through December 31, 2022, which may be extended for 4 additional years not to exceed $100,000 annually.
Motion by Ms. Horn, a second by Mr. Watson. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries.
Item 10A, approve fiscal year 2021 Central Cafeteria Fund Balance designation in the amount of $1,249,500.
Motion by Ms. Horn, second by Ms. Owen. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries.
Item 10B was deferred to January 2022, and I believe item 11, public forum, is next, Madam Chair.
Ms. Satterfield?
Awesome. Thank you, Madam Chair. We have 3 people signed up for public forum. First, we have Rachel Hudson. Rachel Hudson, you have 3 minutes to speak. Please state your name and county you're resident.
My name is Rachel Hudson, and I am a resident of Knox County. As I said, my name is Rachel Hudson, and I taught Knox County schools for 10 years. The majority of those years were spent teaching alongside and under the mentorship of Brandy Self at Moreland Heights Elementary School. Brandy was one of the strongest advocates for children. She believed that every child deserved a champion, an adult who would never give up on him or her, and who understood the power of connection and insisted they become the best they could be. In order to champion children, we need to champion the adults who are most influential in their lives. And that encompasses coming alongside families, but within the school system, it means coming alongside teachers and administrators. The mission of public schools is to provide equitable, quality, and free education for all students, regardless of the zip code in which they are born. Do our actions, decisions, postures, and values support that mission? And are we supporting those who live out that mission every day in the classrooms? During the last few school board meetings, there's been a lot of discussion about learning loss, and it grieves me that there continues to be a gross misunderstanding that missing instruction is the same as missing assignments. This reveals a deep lack of appreciation for the work of our teachers. You can't replace the impact of a teacher's relationship and quality instruction with an assignment. And teachers show up again and again and again because they are there to serve children. However, teachers in our district are realizing that what they're being asked to do is no longer serving children, nor is it in the best interest of children. Now, dedicated teachers can no longer continue within this profession, even though they love it. Self-care and boundaries require and necessitate community and systemic care, which has been lacking. Our children have a lot of ground to cover, and our teachers are our biggest asset in repairing the learning loss. So we need to help and not hinder them in that work. So we call on you to do the following. Hire a superintendent with extensive teaching experience and understanding of the challenges of the classroom. Second, give teachers actual planning work days on their professional development days instead of more meetings. Third, use a snow day to give teachers a day off. When Brandy died, Moreland Heights experienced a major loss and they deserved a bereavement day. They deserve that respect. Fourth, meet with a small group of teachers to listen to their experiences and insights, listen to their hearts and stories without a political decision already being made. Fifth, increase TA and custodial pay. They are crucial to the functioning of the school and they don't make a living wage. Six, hire more professional support staff, counselors, social workers, OTs, PTs, speech teachers, help heal our children and enable them to learn. Seventh, allow and emphasize that the space and support for emotional and social learning is necessary. Lastly, defend your teachers, advocate for them, speak up for increased funding for public schools so that all students can be served well. Our teachers and students deserve a united community that supports them because it's too much on their shoulders to do it alone. If we are continually putting our kids and teachers in a political game, then we've already lost. Our children need
Thank you,
teachers,
Ms. Rachel.
and our teachers need your actions.
Next, we'll have Sarah Grace Mills. Sarah Grace Mills, if you could say your name, county your residence, and you'll have 3 minutes to speak.
Hi, I'm Sarah Mills. I'm from Knox County. I'm a former teacher at Moreland Heights Elementary as well, and I appreciate the opportunity to speak to you this evening. I hope my perspective will help you understand why good teachers are leaving the classroom. How many of you in this room are parents? How many of you in this room have experienced tragedy as a parent? And how difficult was it for you to care for your children as you process that grief? I'm imagining that you took off work. I would hope that your employer encouraged you to prioritize yourself so that you could prioritize your children. When Moreland Heights principal Brandy Self died, teachers were given 10 minutes to process the news, then they were asked to teach. They were given no days off. They were given a paragraph to read if students asked questions. You all canceled school to figure out how to deal with a mask policy. I think you could have canceled school for a tragedy like this. I will not draw a direct comparison between parenthood and teaching, but I will tell you that children are acutely aware of adults who are not being cared for. In my 4 years at Moreland Heights, I served on the leadership team, became a demonstration reading ELA teacher for Knox County, hosted student interns from local colleges, and was consistently scored 4s and 5s on evaluations. I can honestly say I was not the teacher Knox County wanted to lose. When I quit teaching, I did not quit because I didn't want to work, as is the common narrative right now. I quit because I worked too much. I developed a stomach ulcer, recurrent quarter-sized mouth ulcers, and horrific chronic insomnia. I spent thousands of dollars at specialists, all to determine that it was stress. I could use this time to tell you how and why the specific stress I experienced in the classroom, but I don't believe that's the best use of your time. The best use of your time is to do the following. I would encourage you to consider the following suggestions. Require a minimum number of 2nd and 3rd year teachers on the Superintendent Teacher Advisory Council, or develop a new teacher council to get feedback from your youngest teachers who you really can't afford to lose. Each of you need time in the classroom. I know that some of you had it, and I'm thankful for it, but this is a different time for teachers. Consider subbing 5 days a year and write those sub-plans yourself. Consider shadowing a teacher for 5 days a year. Spend time with the students that you are trying to champion, but spend the time in the shoes of the people who champion them every day. I believe the school board has a desire to champion students, but I'm concerned there's a growing divide between you and the teachers. Your teachers are on the ground giving hugs, handing out ice packs, wiping tears, cracking jokes, worrying at night, and teaching reading and math. Walk in their shoes, be their champion. This is what our principal, Brandy Self, did, and this is what I'm asking you to do now. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Next, we have Caitlin Jones. Caitlin Jones. You have 3 minutes to speak, and if you could state your name and county of residence.
Hi, my name is Caitlin Jones, and I'm from Knox County. I first wanted to show my appreciation to the board members here, Board Member Henderson and everyone else who voted for the survey related to masks. I believe I speak for not only myself, but several parents across Knox County when I say we see that you're listening and attempting to do something to help in the case with the mask mandate. I also wanted to say thank you to Board Member McMillan for asking to have the graph regarding the superintendent search to include more details with the explanations and the processes. This last year has been extremely an eye-opening experience, and I have realized I need to be paying closer attention to my son's education and the processes in which he receives it. Something that is frustrating is the lack of access to information on the lawsuit, which is keeping our kids in masks. For me, having a transparent and open line of communication regarding where we are in the process of the case would be appreciated. I find it difficult to find the potential court date, and there hasn't really been any new information given. While I understand that there may not be anything new happening, even an email saying that there's nothing happening would be appreciated. I also wanted to speak briefly on the transfer policy. It is difficult to find the proper procedures to follow when moving to a different school zone mid-year. Alec and I moved 2 miles and changed his assigned school from A.L. Watts to a school on North Shore. I thought I wouldn't have to apply for a transfer to keep him at A.L. Watts until the following school year. However, that is apparently not the case. I reached out to the transfer office, who told me it was up to the school principal, but unfortunately, due to issues with the mask mandate, my relationship with the principal was harmed. I have sent several requests for approval for him to stay and have not received an answer in weeks on if Alec would be forced to transfer to a new school next semester. Due to Alec's disabilities, it would be detrimental to move him to a new school and right in the middle of a school year. This would mean that he would have to have all new therapists, teachers, TAs, case managers, students, etc. I feel as though there should be some process that a child with special needs in a situation like this would be able to apply for a request and have it answered in a reasonable time. As of today, I still have not had an answer from Alec's principal on if he'll be forced out of A.L. Watts into a new school. And no transfer IEP meeting has been set as a result of no approval or denial being made, even though that would be required. Also, with regards to the superintendent search, I think it's important to remember that special needs community, and I would like for you all to keep that in mind when looking for somebody. I guess you could say that the theme of this was asking for continued communication and transparency. I appreciate those of you who have tried bettering communication between the district and the parents. We see those of you that are making an effort and listening to parents' concerns, and we look forward to continue working with you guys in the future years and hope to better communication even further. Thank you.
Thank you. That concludes public forum. Thank you, Madam Chair.
So we had a request for board forum tonight. Mr. Chin?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. So this is honestly kind of briefly touched on in the public forum as well. But just as a student, teachers are really our next line of people who provide the education that we need. And having talked to some teachers, at least one, I've heard about perhaps undercurrents within Knox County schools about teacher dissatisfaction within this county and who might lead to issues down the line next year or in the future. And so I was just wondering if the board has had any communication regarding that issue, and if so, if there are any plans to perhaps remedy those issues in our county.
So can you repeat the question? I'm sorry.
Yeah. So basically, seeing as there seems to be large amounts of dissatisfaction within teachers in Knox County schools, have board members heard from teachers regarding that dissatisfaction? And if so, are there any plans to perhaps remedy that for the following school years?
Okay. All right. Ms. Owen, did you, for board forum?
You're going to address that question?
Well, I mean, we could individually address, I mean, I can tell you, other than phone calls from a few that I know personally, that's all I've received, and it's a handful since the beginning of the school year.
I think it's been an ongoing call. I would like to thank Ms. Coatney and Mr. Dupler for working with me on the policies that we looked at. I told you last time that I would group those so that we could get through it more quickly. And once we got that done, looking at how the record keeping was going to be for that was going to make it more difficult, significantly more difficult. And so it made more sense to go straight through. But in the future, it may be easier to do it that way. So we had a practice session, and we'll look at that in the future. Thank you.
Perfect. Mr. Watson? Ms. Babb? Mr. McMillan? Sorry, Ms. Bounds?
Yes, I just wanted to congratulate the Powell Panthers on their winning the state championship in 5A for football this past Friday night. Way to go, Panthers.
Congratulations. Ms. Henderson? Ms. Horn? Ms. Satterfield? All right, meeting is adjourned.